It's all yours, then.
Good morning. How are you all today? Great to see many of you last night at our community event. We also have, this is a hybrid meeting, so we also have guests online. There we go. Now, I make Crystal happy. Okay, so again, this is a hybrid meeting. We have guests that are on Zoom today, and all our guests here in the room. I'd like to welcome all of you to this meeting. I call the meeting to order. Our first two orders of business before we kind of get to the introductions is the approval of the agenda. Just a couple of highlights on the agenda for today's meeting. We do have two approvals that we'll be looking to receive from the council today. One is the approval of the updated strategic action plan, and then also approval of the associated resolutions on the regional challenge grants. I unfortunately will be leaving at 12:30 today. I'll be leaving at the lunch break. At that point, Vice Chair Jeff Charbonneau will be taking over in my place. I will still be participating by phone as I rush back to SeaTac Airport to catch a plane to Chicago at 5:30. So wish me luck. And then also we're shifting a little bit of time. Mike and I have been talking. There's been a lot of discussion about FAFSA. What's been going on with FAFSA. So we were going to cover that in the executive director's report. We're now going to allow a little bit more time for that discussion in the strategic action plan in that section of the document. So that's kind of the agenda. Is there any, from the council, is there any proposed changes to the agenda? Yes.
Adoption of the agenda.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Next thing is the approval of the minutes of our January 2024 meeting. They were in the board or in the council materials. Before I ask for a motion to approve, are there any friendly amendments or edits to those minutes? Around the room, I'm seeing none. Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second? Okay, hearing a motion to approve in a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Which brings me to our welcome to this event, and I want to introduce Chairman Lewis from the Yakima Nation. I also want to acknowledge that we are meeting on the lands of the Yakima Nation this morning, and it truly is a privilege to be here on these lands. So, Chairman Lewis, I'm going to turn it over to you to do your welcome.
Is it on? Okay. Thank you. First of all, I want to extend my big thank you to come to the lands of Yakima. We are pretty much in the heart of the Yakima Nation. Our lands extend from the city of Mapton all the way up to Mount Adams. Half of Mount Adams is in the Yakima Nation territory. Then it goes to Lake Chelan north and across and through this area. All of our ceded lands, that we call our ceded lands, but the traditional territory, our reservation is right here. So I want to thank each and every one of you because it is extremely important of what we are talking about. Schooling of our children. It's very, very important. What they learn in these facilities is only a portion of what they learn throughout their life. And when they get home, they're still not done learning. They learn from their elders, their parents. It's a 24-hour job, I know, because I've gone through that as well, throughout my years of schooling. Even when I went away to school, it was the same way. So today, I just want to open with the song so that things may go good, and accordingly, words that will come will flow just like water. So with that, we'll sing a song, 3 verses, to ring the bell to open up this meeting. 9. Naimama, Niknash Manikshas, Kulula. We'll sing one song, 3 verses with the bell, and then conclude by ringing the bell to open up this very important meeting this day. As we sing this song, think of our loved ones that maybe are at home. And I want to say a prayer for each and every one that have traveled to be here, that your travels be safe, as we hear Chairman speak about leaving early so that he may make a travel from Seattle to Chicago. It's extremely important that we look to Tumanwith, our Creator, and ask Him for blessings for our lives, for our family. When we get home, they're very appreciative to see us return. No matter where we go, maybe it's just around the block, downtown, or cross country. I mentioned to Mr. Sun this morning that we have couple of tribal council members that are busy in Washington, D.C. this week. They left Sunday, won't be back until Friday, possibly Saturday. But it's this type of work that tribal council is fully involved in to help take care of our lands, especially our people. So today, as we are here in this facility, lands of Yakima, to say a big prayer to all that have made it here to discuss matters of great importance to every one of us. So I just wanted to express these few words, Ipawi Kushai.
President Sun, would you like to, as a host?
Good morning, and thank you. I'm Andrew Sun, president of, you can hear me? Yeah.
Sorry, President Sun, one moment.
Oh.
Yeah, we have a gift for Chairman Lewis for his incredibly generous amount of time he has spent with us in the beginning of areas that we help. We hope helps many people here in the state of Washington achieve the goals of education.
No, that's all right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Sun, president of Heritage University. So I'd like to welcome you to our institution. We're very proud of achievements we've had at this university. And I'd like to welcome, of course, members of the council, our chairman of the other council, tribal council, and all our guests that are here today. And of course, our guests that are remote also, thank you for being and joining us at Heritage University this morning. As I mentioned to some of you that were here yesterday, Heritage University is a resultant division of two Yakima women that wanted to bring access to quality higher education to this region of the state of Washington in the Yakima Nation. And we feel that we have worked very hard to make sure that we're fulfilling that role. And that means that in terms of our demographics, we very much look like this region of the nation. And our student body is about 70% Latino students, about 50% Native American, and the other 50% is just every other single group you can imagine in our nation, in our state that comes and studies with us. About 70, a little more than that now, 70% of our students are women. And we offer a variety of undergraduate and graduate degrees with a great vision of making sure that we have quality higher education in this region. We have faculty that come from the most prestigious institutions throughout the nation to share their knowledge and their skills with us. I like to say that one of the first things we did when I came was to honor our relationship with the Yakima Nation and work with the tribe and partnership with the tribe to make sure that we created a scholarship, the Full Circle Scholarship, to assure that no enrolled member of the Yakima Nation would need to pay for tuition from out of pocket. We work with the tribe and some of the resources they have, as well as all the other resources that exist in our state, as well as our own fundraising to make sure we cover tuition 100% for all enrolled Yakima. And I guess WSAC has been an indirect partner in that because although we didn't ask permission for that, the Washington College Grant is part of this partnership because Yakima members, of course, benefit. Many of them benefit from having access to the Washington College Grant. Very important to us is to mention that actually because of this commitment we have to the region is that we are an institution that has two federal designations. We are both a Hispanic serving institution and we are also a Native American non-tribal serving institution. One of only two in the nation. Heritage University, and I believe is Northern New Mexico State, something like that is the other one. It's in New Mexico. I know that much. And that is obviously is only a federal designation, which is powerful for certain funding streams and so on. But we are very proud to be able to say that we work with the people of this region. Finally, I'd like to mention, I mentioned it yesterday, that we're very happy with the progress we've made with our legislators in Olympia to partner with WSAC so we can have a college and the high school program at Heritage University. And we're already having a significant outreach with several schools here that have shown great interest in working with us in what I believe is going to be another powerful tool to allow people in this region to access higher education. So that's a wonderful new opportunity. It's a pilot program, but I'm sure that the pilot will be successful and we'll be able to progress through that and make it a permanent reality for our valley here to have college and high school as an opportunity for our students. So once again, thank you so much for being here today. I hope you have a very productive meeting, and I hope that you also, perhaps during breaks, have a little time to walk around, take a look at what Heritage is about. We just had commencement last Saturday. You won't see too many students walking around because it's after commencement, it's a bit of relaxation. Summer classes don't begin, graduate classes begin next week, undergraduate the following week. So we're not having too much action right now. There's a few stragglers doing something or other. But overall, I hope you get an opportunity to get a feel for what Heritage University is about, and you can take a little bit of Heritage with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to take a moment to have council members introduce themselves to the audience in the room and Zoom. Just a reminder, I'm Jeff Vincent. I am current chair of the council. I'm a citizen member. We'll start Sativa with you.
Good morning, everyone. Sativa Jones with Highland Hills.
Hi, Ruben Flores. I'm the Executive Director of the Council of Presidents, the association that represents the 6 public baccalaureate institutions. And
Good morning, everyone. Terry Standish-Kiwan, representing Independent Colleges of Washington on behalf of Heritage University and our other 8 members.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mustafa Samate. I'm a student from the University of Washington, Seattle campus, and I'm one of our student members representing undergraduate students.
Good morning, Jeff Charbonneau, citizen member and principal of Zoa High School.
Good morning, everyone. Evangelina Galvan-Shreve, and I'm a citizen member. In my day job, I am the Director of STEM Education and Workforce Development and the Chief Diversity Officer of Pacific Northwest National Laboratory.
Good morning, everyone. I am Tathara Patel, and I'm a student member as a council member in WSAC, and I'm a 5th-year graduate student in Washington State University, Pullman.
And online, we have Paul.
Yeah, so we also have Paul. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Francis. I'm the Executive Director of the State Board for Community and Technical Colleges. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person. I do see Dr. Linda Kaminsky, President of Yakima Valley College. It's good to see you, Dr. Kaminsky. And I do have to step out about 10 o'clock to take a phone call, but I'm thrilled to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, so that
Concludes the introductions. With that, Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you for your executive director report.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm Mike Miali. I'm the Executive Director of the Washington Student Achievement Council. As many of the members of the council knew, we were planning as part of this update to talk about the enormous amount of work that our staff and with their partners around the state have been doing to help students and families, schools, and communities cope with the disruption as the rollout of the FAFSA system from the federal government. Because that really ties into some conversations about what we will, with our strategic action plan, particularly on enrollment, our intention will be, and that's the next item after the opening segment of the agenda. We're going to start the strategic action plan conversation on enrollment with a very short update as to where we are, what we're doing. For my normal sort of executive director update, I want to share, some of the council members know this. WSAC has long been the state partner with the Washington State Opportunity Scholarship, which is a public-private partnership. It's about the same age as the council. The council was created about 13 years ago, so it's the State Opportunity Scholarship, with a partnership between initially Microsoft, Boeing, and the state in funding scholarships. It was initially just for bachelor's degrees, 4-year degrees. It has since expanded. Their scholarships have expanded to include associate's degrees, career technical education program certificates, and the like. And they continue to raise substantial amounts of money from the private world. And we match with them and partner with them. I was pleased to hear President Sun told me that they were here recently getting some promotional materials. You know, in their growth, they've been an amazing organization. How they've evolved from being simply like, here's a scholarship, and it's actually a more generous income level than the Washington College grant. So it goes up to more. I think it's 125 to 150% of median family income, where our grants stop at 100% of statewide median family income. And it does focus on high need areas, but that's broadly across for technical education, healthcare, technology, et cetera. One of the things we've been talking a lot about is and they have grown. They also provide direct student support services, mentoring, et cetera. Is how we can work better together with them to promote awareness and use of the Washington State Opportunity Scholarship Funds, particularly in other parts of the state than just the Greater Puget Sound area, which is where people, when we say Microsoft and Boeing, people start to think, there, you know, and obviously the State Opportunity Scholarship is a statewide initiative. They do have a board member who lives in Yakima, who's in the agricultural world, of 4 generations of farmers, the way he describes it, you know, his family to me. And they recently asked me to serve on the search committee for the new executive director. And I'm doing that, and I think we're sort of an extraordinary indication of the partnership we've achieved with them, because that's not required. We're not in a governance role with them. We're in a financial funding partner. So I'll be spending some time on that work, and also looking to work with a new executive director there and our staff to work with them on how to maximize the value that the Washington State Opportunity Scholarship brings to communities around the state. And I can see, and I'm sure there already is work going on in the Yakima Valley, but I can see that growing in a multiple-sided partnership approach as we figure out better how to do these things in a collaborative way. And with that, I will update on an abbreviated update. I wanted to turn it over to Chairman, back to the chair.
Okay, I just have a few things I want to try to keep us on track today. One thing I wanted to bring up to the council, we currently have our November council meeting scheduled for 2 days on November 5th and 6th, which happens to be, and we knew this at the time, but I think now that people recognize that with the upcoming election, people are going like, oh wow, that could be an interesting couple of days. And I'm based on our experience last year, I made a personal commitment to the council and staff that we weren't going to move dates from, right, which happened last year. I do want to, and we had a discussion about this at executive committee, knowing this concern about having it on those dates. And so I wanted to have give the council an option. And this is going to be a virtual meeting. One of the things with the retreat being in October, we're going to have a chance to get together in person again. The decision has been made to make this virtual meeting where we only have to have 1 day in November. So the options I'd like to put forth to the council, we can stay with November 11th, we free up November 6th. So November 11th is actually that Tuesday, which would be election day. We'd be done in time for people either to vote early or go home and vote. We can move it to that Monday, November 4th, or we can move it to the following week on November 12th. And so I wanted to see what the appetite was of the council in moving it from November 5th, which would be the kind of current date that we'd be looking at, which would be election day, to either the Monday before, on the 4th, or on November 12th. Any reaction, thoughts to that?
If you can remind me, what typically is the agenda in November? Is it lunch session related or?
Yeah, that will be, typically, we'll have a variety of different subjects. It'll be a full day. We don't have the agenda laid out. But we'll hopefully during the retreat, we talk about our legislative priorities in October. So it'll be kind of our normal business on that Tuesday.
Third option, I have a note, November 11th, November 4th.
Yeah, you keep it on November 5th, which is the current day that we have on our calendar. You can move it to November, then move it to Monday instead of Tuesday, or we can move it to the following week on the 12th. Yeah, that Tuesday. So I apologize. The goal was not to move these, but then I had a request to the executive committee because it was the reality of it is election time. And really, are people going to be in the right mind space on that day?
It's going to be a big election cycle for our state. There's a lot of things changing. I'm okay with it.
It would give us time to kind of digest what happened the week before, because we have referendums, we got a bunch of different things on the ballot. Yes, Jeff.
To be quite honest, the 12th makes a lot of sense to me because otherwise all we're going to do on the 4th is go, well, we'll see what happens tomorrow. So why don't we do it the 12th because the new reality is there.
Okay. Crystal, did I make your life extremely hard, or are you okay?
No.
You really want to have, you and Chris a lot.
You just gave me 6 months notice, so.
Okay, so is there a motion to move our November meeting to November 12th, and it will be a virtual meeting? Is there a second? And Paul, I haven't heard from you. Are you okay with that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that works well for me.
Okay, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. We have that done 6 months in advance. That's great. Again, I apologize for the change. When we did that last year, we all voted to have it on that date, but then on further reflection, it just didn't make sense. Second thing I want to talk to you about, Executive Council met here a couple of weeks ago. We're getting close to our retreat date. I want to remind people that we have a council retreat on October 17th. We've been reflecting on, that's really basically 5 months from now. We've been reflecting on what we hope to accomplish. We've designated 4 different topics or purpose for that meeting. One is develop a better understanding of the roles and responsibility of council members and create a more cohesive working relationship among council members. We want to create a better understanding of the council's past achievements and current challenges. We want to explore some big ideas that could help accelerate Washington's obtainment of a 70% post-secondary goal. So it's an opportunity to take what we're going to talk about today in the strategic action plan and basically say if there's something missing. There's something else that we should be doing beyond what we're hopefully approving today. That'll be a key part of it. And then we want to talk about identify potential council goals for the coming year, including a preliminary legislative agenda for 25. We would kick off the meeting at 8 o'clock. We're targeting Bellingham. So we would be going to a different region of the state. We could go to Whatcom County. We would start from 11 to 12, 8 to 11, focusing on group dynamics. 11 to 12, provide context for afternoon discussion. Then we spend 12 to 3 with the working lunch on educating the board, educating the council on big ideas being pursued by other states, and then brainstorming ideas. What we maybe would like to build off of some of those ideas, or on some of those ideas or not. And then we would begin the process of flagging 25 objectives in a legislative agenda. So that's kind of the lay of the land. This really builds off the evaluation, the feedback that I got from council members last fall, of really thinking that we really did need to strengthen our relationships among each other, but also start thinking about, are there some other bigger ideas that we need to be exploring beyond what we've been talking about over the last few years? So hopefully this retreat will do that. We're in the process of hiring someone to help act as a facilitator. Also, that person will be reaching out to each of the council members individually, getting the feedback of the meeting and their thoughts and ideas. So that should be, I think that person is close to being hired under contract, and that we'll start getting that process underway here starting in probably no later than June. So that's the retreat. Any questions on the retreat?
Chairman,
Yes.
for planning purposes, will there be a community meeting the night before?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Angela. What the idea was, we're going to have an optional dinner on the night before with community members. So we would bring together community members from within Whatcom County to an event that night. It's optional, because I understand some people have got some distance to travel, but we'd love to have all the council there. We'll start off bright and early the next morning and have people off on the road by 3:30. Okay. So that's the retreat agenda. Next thing in my report, one of the things that came out of the council feedback last year, that we needed to do a better job of onboarding new members. So we've took that to heart. I hopefully, Kyle, you feel like you've been onboarded well here over the last couple of months. And also, we were going to be assigning mentors to new council members. I'm actually taking on the assignment of being Pal's mentor here for the coming year. And finally, we have somebody leaving us today as our last meeting. Mustafa has been a valuable member of our council here for the past, how long have you been with us, Mustafa? 2022, and your voice has always been appreciated at the council table. You were going to be missed, but we really just wanted to have the opportunity today to say thank you for all your contributions and wish you all the best. And this is just a small token of our appreciation for you.
Thank you so much, Chairman. And I have been involved with WSAC since when I was a student at Edmonds Community College back in 2019. And this has been really an amazing opportunity for me, not just for myself, but a lot of the students across our state that we have represented. I have made meaningful connections and learned a lot from WSAC, especially for staff members that I have worked with during my time here at WSAC. And I want to say thank you to Heather, Amy, Dawn, Crystal, Inez, Abby, Rod, Hannah, and Abby Shan, and a lot of all of you who support the students and the work that we do. You really made a meaningful impact in my life and a lot of other students, and I wanted to say thank you for that. And I hope that the council can take time today to also focus on basic needs, because it's really important for students to really get some support that they need so that they can keep staying in school and be able to retain their time at their different colleges. And I just wanted to say thank you again.
It's just my last comment as we go into our main part of our agenda. As always, we encourage these meetings to be inclusive and people to feel like they can participate right along with the council, both people that are participating by Zoom and the people in this room. So as we have discussion, we encourage you to be part of the discussions. With that, we're going to go into our first agenda item, which is the update on strategic action plan. So Mike,
I I will do a brief framing of the strategic action plan process. Council members have been through this, we do this every year, this is not, we don't do a 5-year plan and come back, every 5 years. But for everyone in the room and everyone online and others, I thought it would be good to re-ground, what we're doing here today is, about 13 or 14 years ago, when the council was formed by legislation, its first job was to set forth a goal for the state of Washington, not just as a state agency, as to what our goal was for educational success. That's our I like to call it our famous 70% goal, in which we seek to help the state get to a point where 70% of all adults between the age of 25 and 44 have achieved a credential beyond high school. And we all define credentials, and we use that adult population to recognize there are many pathways to success, and it does not all have to happen at a given age, we adopted that. The council adopted that goal. It was approved by the legislature and signed by the governor. For a number of years after that, there were a number of planning efforts in the council that were grounded in that goal, but talked about many issues around higher education success and access to equity for students. About 6 years ago, the council wanted to sort of pull it all together in a more coherent framework. To answer the question, what are we going to do to actually get to that 70%? And that's how the strategic action plan was born. And so you will see how it's grounded in our work around, first and foremost, equity, but also increasing affordability and enrollment, student success, and support for students' basic needs across housing and transportation, childcare, et cetera, many other issues. And so what we do is every year, one of the key elements of the strategic action plan is it explains the goal, it's every kind of goal, it explains why educational success is so important to both individuals and to society. But then it walks the reader through a sort of a baseline of where we are now as far as state policy. It does not attempt to summarize all the things being done on campuses to achieve all of it. It's an attempt to spell out a state policy around those we call our clusters of enrollment, affordability, equity, student success. That is actually the most of the content of the strategic action plan is that spelling out a baseline, which we think is a very important tool for a state really to have, not just us. Because when I'm asked a question, or any of us are asked a question, what is the state doing to increase enrollment? I was asked that question when I first came here 6, 7 years ago, and you would sort of, by reporters, and you would sort of come up with some, you have in your mind a set of things that you're doing. This gives us the answers that we can all understand and agree to as the question, what is the state doing to increase affordability? What are we doing to increase enrollment? That's why it's so important. It does not change much because it only reflects year to year the change in state policy. So you will see in the document this year, there are several changes that are driven by legislative bills that were passed or budget decisions that were made in the past session. So we update that. And then the strategic action plan closes with a statement of our work priorities for the coming year. And that is, in some ways, that's the most important part for the council to be affirming today, sort of the blessing what has been put together as what our plan is for next year. And again, for our partners and audience and people here or else or online is the proposal you see in front of you is not a staff-driven document. Our staff works with council members. We don't call them subcommittees, but we sort of have a small group of council members on affordability, on enrollment, on student support situation, and they help working with staff and will be involved in the presentation they put together. So that's the process. What we're really seeking in sort of normal rhythm is to have the work priorities approved, the document approved today, then sets our plan for the next fiscal year that starts on July 1 and our ongoing work. I'll briefly there to see if there's a question about the format structure. And I'm going to think we might be ready to go into enrollment as the first item. And I Forum for Nine will be led by other council members and staff. But since we're opening on enrollment, this is where I wanted to discuss a little bit of background on the work we have been doing in years, almost always working with partners, to try to help Washington students and families and communities navigate the difficulties that are created by the new FAFSA application system that was rolled out this year across the country. And FAFSA is, of course, the application that is used to get federal student aid, but many years ago in the state, we decided the most student-friendly way to get students financial aid is not to have them fill out different applications for different reasons, but to fill out FAFSA, work for their campus, and you can award state and federal aid. We have long had at the Student Achievement Council an investment and ongoing effort in increasing FAFSA applications, awareness of financial aid, et cetera. So, we entered this year with this very much front and center on our minds. This was a very evolving and rapidly changing scenario, so there was a lot of adaptive response to what's going on. Can you put up, okay, so we have this slide. We also have, I believe in your folders, we have a one-pager that summarizes all of this. I think it's captioned FAFSA simplification. It essentially presents this information. I'm not going to walk through this, but if we can go back to the PowerPoint, okay, go to the next slide. I'm going to ask if Sarah Weiss is here, I believe, our council. Sarah, I was going to ask Sarah very briefly. Sarah's going to give you, because here's what's important for you to know is we start early, and we start early with our partners. And so Sarah's going to give you some really quick understanding of how long ago we started preparing with our partners for what we knew would be a challenging year.
Mic working? Okay, excellent. So again, good morning, everyone. Sarah Weiss, Director of College Access Initiatives at the Student Achievement Council. And within the College Access Initiatives team, as Mike mentioned, we work with K-12, higher ed, community organizations, a whole wide variety of partners. We started preparing and coordinating for the changes that would be coming with the FAFSA and WSAC in last spring, about just over a year ago. When the delay was announced, we started strategizing with several partners, including OSPI, some in the K-12, higher ed, many of your sectors that are here today. In July of last year, our team attended a National College Attainment Network training co-hosted with Federal Student Aid to get more information at that point of what was coming and what was going on. So that happened in last July. And then in August, we began rolling out training as soon as we were able to get that information and push it out to partners. Began that training in July as well. And I just want to point out Yasleen towards being on our team, who's one of our trainers. So thank you, Yasleen, for being here. And so those trainings happen. We continue to push out messages to college-bound students and parents directly via email and OtterBot. We're continuing to host events using data-informed decision-making on outreach to who we are picking up the phone and calling in terms of schools to see what supports they need, what outreach can be helpful, and how we can support in their FAFSA initiative work. And so as I mentioned, obviously we know we're in mid-May at this point, but it's full steam ahead for our team. We're still making those calls. Details are on the PowerPoint and in your handouts. I also want to speak a moment just briefly about our student financial assistance team who began working with financial aid offices as soon as the law was passed. They have done cross-training with us, with sector work group that they host. And they began to signal that those big changes were coming with FAFSA and ultimately the WSAC application as well. And then starting last summer as well, they began stepping up those regular communications when there's more information coming through the work group that meets monthly to provide that guidance and flexibility with college campuses, updates, and on all of those needs. And so it's really been full steam ahead this year, pivoting as when needed, training, materials, outreach, connecting with as many partners as we can to bring them on board with the changes that are happening. So I think I'll leave it there, Mike, to just do a brief intro, but again, thank you. First of all, also finally, I'd like to say thank you to all the partners in this room who have helped in those efforts. It's been critical to have that cross-sector collaboration through this process.
I'm not gonna go through the slides point by point, but to understand it at a high level frame is, we reach out to students and parents directly ourselves. But we have a team of about 5 people, I think, is, you know, Sarah's team, and we have others who help out, but we have a very limited team to do that, what I call that direct contact. But we also work through our partnerships. So the vast majority of our ability to connect to people around the state is through network partnerships. And things like training, we train 2,000 plus volunteers to help people with FAFSA support and filling out the FAFSA, that sort of thing. So we do communicate with all free and reduced price lunch students by email. We've done that for years. Email, unfortunately, is not a very effective way to connect to people generally, but especially not the younger generation. It's why we started the chatbot tool several years ago, because it clearly connects much better with young people. We don't have, its target is all the free and reduced price lunch students, but we don't have cell phone numbers for all of them, but we are reaching many tens of thousands of students across the state who are highly likely to be eligible for the Washington College grant. And we also, that's a sort of a direct engagement, kind of a technique. And then we also do, for the first time last year, advertising. We're given $1 million by the state to do advertising. We supplemented that to kick up the amount of advertising in Washington College grant. That has led to an enormous increase. Our web traffic was always fairly modest as an agency because we didn't have much resources to promote it. We promoted much more. We like doubled over the last year in terms of hundreds and hundreds of thousands. Tens of 60,000 or so using directly the page that's helping you deal with the FAFSA issues that you might be struggling with. So I think just wanted to sort of give that overall sense. You'll see it, that's some web base, that's the final page of the PowerPoint. So the reason why we want to share this is because I think it's very important when you're dealing with a very difficult situation like this. We are not trying to be defensive because we recognize how serious the issue is. But we also recognize that the work that we do in this area and our partners do in this area is not normally front and center in big public conversations. So it's not really a policy change, policy innovation conversations take place at the council. This normally doesn't, because we've been doing this for well more than a decade. And the team is very responsive to the needs as they happen week to week and month to month. They don't need to come to leadership. They know they have the support of the agency to respond in a way that makes sense. So there's a lot more direct outreach through webinars and others going on now. So we wanted to share that as a frame to bring into a conversation enrollment, because we're now, I think many people involved in this are becoming concerned that it is possible the impacts of the new FAFSA system will not have been resolved in this financial aid cycle, and they still will in the next. So we're happy to have a conversation about the work that we do and our partnerships, but also, I know there's council voices who are going to weigh in this, hear your frontline experiences with students and families, and how do we shape that and express that in our priority statement? Because now it's at the point where it probably is, even though it's work we do and our partners do, it's worth elevating to the level of a policy statement. And that's just my opinion. So we're going to kick off the SAP with, I don't know if we're going to go straight to Rafi Sativa on the enrollment discussion, as you were going to do before I included all this FAFSA conversation here, but I don't, there's my, okay, so you take it away is what I'm basically saying.
Thank you, Mike. And maybe we can just get to the enrollment slide.
Now, is your microphone on?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we can just get to the enrollment slide, and I'll actually be giving it.
It's hard to get here.
maybe I need to hold it much closer. I'll actually pass it to Sandeeva. It's really appreciate the collaboration and conversations we've had. So you still can't hear me?
It may not be the right.
We can hear it.
Is it better now?
Yes. Is it possible to stand?
Yeah, I
Thank
can.
you.
I was actually just going to say that I will, just want to say thank you to Sandeeva for all the collaboration and conversations we've been having. And I'll actually start off by passing it on to her to provide the context in which we came to this, space and time right now.
Well, first, I would be if I didn't just piggyback off of Mike's words that he opened this with. I will say in my word of this last fall and the current standing of our seniors has probably been one of the most challenging on top of COVID in terms of helping students be excited about their future. The landscape has shifted so dramatically in terms of just being able to get through the application itself. We started our senior survey, and 56% of our seniors are in a holding pattern because of financial aid. They cannot verify their application, or they are awaiting an award letter, which is May. And so I just really appreciate the work that the council has done. I feel very privileged to be able to call this team and say, hey, we see the country, our people have folks that have been doing this work for 15 years on my team and are having to learn how to ride a bike again because they didn't fall game. And so we have greatly benefited from this game. A lot of knowledge that is being claimed as people driving to my district, training my team to make sure that we have the latest and greatest information to be able to adequately serve our students. And I get excited when I see those messages come through so that I can copy and paste it and distribute to my students, families, and leaders in our system so that they are in the know of what we are grappling with when we're talking to young people about their future. So again, I just really appreciate the work that the council in to address the challenges that are on the ground in real time, while also simultaneously thinking big picture in terms of policy to remove barriers throughout this process for folks. So I feel very fortunate to be in this space and see this work in action and real time. In terms of the enrollment strategic cluster, in the packet it talks quite a bit about the landscape, but I think one of the things, and Rocky will chime in, that really sits with me in terms of watching students and families struggle navigating the applications is that the hope in the data that we're seeing in terms of students who are receiving base financial aid or financial aid in general is increasing. And so the demographics and the folks that we are really hoping are accessing the very generous financial aid programs that are offered here in the state are actually being utilized by the people that they were intended to shift social mobility, upward mobility. And so it's been really exciting to see in this preliminary data that is what is happening. And then secondly, with the Washington Cross-Grant Pathway Bill related to SNAP, for families that we already know are going to be eligible to be able to remove some of those barriers of that process in itself. And so having sat in a room, in a community space, with a mom who's very passionate about their kids, pursuing post-secondary, but might have a language barrier, but has all the aspirations and dreams of a young person and their young person that's going to work, how are we continuously on a larger scale continue to meet these barriers? These are two really great examples of how that's happening. So to be able to see that from both that higher landscape space of how that's beginning to happen, as well as to see it on the ground has been really beneficial. And
Let's open this up. I know there's a lot of people. So, and not really have a lot in the council area.
Thank you so much, Ron, for hard work and thought into putting all of this together and providing information and knowledge for us to understand the challenges in the real ground. And Sarah, you talked about the communication that have been going on with different partners in different schools. I was wondering, with all the challenges that have been made aware, are there any like communication for schools to understand how flexible they may be for students to actually make decisions on whether they want to choose a particular school and understand how they get guidance in school?
That's a great question. Part of the partnership work is, hearing from the institutions, the colleges, where they can be flexible with deadlines or awards and that work. And we've certainly been pushing all of that messaging out via email, via Otterbot, which is our texting platform to students, as well as in our student and family messaging, which is designed to send, I think, Sativa, that's what you were probably referencing, was the messaging that's meant to be sent to educators and advocates and then copy pasted and pushed out, to students and families directly. So that the information is there and accurate. And so we rely very heavily on our hiring partners in the room to share with us and around where there's flexibility in deadlines. I know, commitment deadlines were pushed out later. But there are other, factors that go into that. And so working with our partners has been critical in that, but those are a few of the avenues we've pushed it out.
I was just gonna give a real-time example when Decision Day has been pushed back and there were a lot of updates coming out simultaneously. The way that it's been most effective is when I see that our partners who are also working directly with our students or families are sending the same consistent, accurate messaging. And so College Success Foundation has been one of our extraordinary partners in our system. And so when I see the message come through, I'm able to say, like, go ahead, copy and paste it. I'm like, I'm plagiarizing at this point because, but she's like, no, please do that. Copy, paste. So we send that out to our staff, our leaders, our students, and our families. And then I also see a secondary message go out from College Success Foundation that is reinforcing that same accurate real-time information. So it's without me having to go and say, okay, CSF, we're gonna send this on this day. It has really created this streamlined way to be able to share information in real time with students and families. That's coming from a trusted source to really massive widespread this messaging for families and to be able to solve home languages has really been a game changer for us to not have to go to the table to then develop messaging to send out. So that way that it be not my opinion and interpretation of what is happening in real time, but it's this collective understanding based on the partnership engagement on all sides. So that has been a game changer for us. And I know for our neighboring districts that don't have the same amount of resources or staffing around this work, that it's a really growing for them to be able to access that type of messaging to share with their students.
So I just wanted to reflect a little bit because we heard some really great community work yesterday here in the Valley and some really good year-over-year rear view mirror trends. But the Matching District, if I was looking at the WSAC data correctly, rather than 77%, 76% last year, has not yet hit 25% for this year. And so with about 6 weeks to go. And so I just want to encourage everything, and the WSAC team has just been so fabulous with the work that you've done. I just think we need to be thinking already very dynamically about that group of students. And I think, Jeff, you shared with me yesterday, it's not for a lack of support and trying at the school district level, but we've definitely heard phone calls being unanswered at the Department of Education. We heard, trust issues where a family member would put their information in and it would disappear. So I just, I wanted to give voice to the concerns around those trust issues because I worry that there's a shadow that families will be less likely to go through this process.
I'd like to add to my gratitude to the WSAC staff who have just done an amazing job and really a point of crisis in higher ed because of the FAFSA situation. A lot of gratitude for these individual staff, but also for a number of partners. I mean, College Success Foundation was mentioned. the League of Education Voters, Gates Foundation, Graduate Tacoma. There's just been so many of these amazing partners who are helping us get the word out that we're going to be flexible. And when our sector agreed to shift our commitment date from May 1st to June 1st, they were sharing all that out for us and just doing this kind of as a family of higher ed champions, and I really appreciate it. Right now, from our sector's perspective, board letters are going out. But what Sativa said was true. I mean, there's so many of these still caught in this verification, corrections, and things like that that are holding it up. And we are not in a state that had a healthy college-going culture already. And so taking this hit is substantial for us. And I'm glad that there have been so many partners working with us to share out this word and these concerns as we began talking about it in early January. A number of legislators have been phenomenal in helping us get the word out too. Senator Nobles, Senator Hansen, Representative Slatter, and more have all been helping us make awareness happen about this. But now we're at this point where we're beyond awareness. Now we're into encouragement. And we want to let students know that it is a shorter application, beyond whatever bugs that are still involved in it. It is an important tool. It's a necessary tool. Let's help them get it filled out. So I appreciate just so many people in this work and what amazing partnerships we've been able to expand that we've done.
Thank you. I would also like to echo everybody's gratefulness for WSAC and all our partners in the work they've been doing. I do have a growing sense of concern as we are heading into summer, and highlighting what Terry said, I actually have goosebumps. I'm very concerned. When we look at the data following the pandemic and the enrollment declines, we saw the students who received need-based aid have a tempered impact. So we were able to retain them during that significant decline. I'm worried, considering what's happening with the FAFSA today, that as we primarily lose the support of our K-12 partners as messengers and communicators, that there's several students either who have not applied or who are caught in this glitch that's happening. And I really think we need to rally our community partners to help us in these next few months, so we don't see what I am concerned about, which is a segment of our demographic community highly impacted, especially in the rural community and with our diverse students who may not have those champions at home who are helping them continue to not give up and continue with the FAFSA process. Or there might be decisions that we will see, impacting the data in the fall. And so I don't think our work is done. And I really encourage us to think about more statewide messaging, to have a second wave of efforts happening here in the next 2 months.
Okay, Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to +1 on everyone's comments. Thank you to Sarah Weiss and the WSAC team. Ruben used the word crisis. This is an absolute crisis. We need to think of it as such. I just pulled the numbers, and if you look at FAFSA completion rates, we're at, and this is a little bit old, it's about 10 days old, but 29.3%. We are down 21.1% versus last year. This is an absolute crisis that is going to affect tens of thousands of students who will not enroll in higher education. And as a full Pell Grant student, I think it's just horrible what's happening here. So I really applaud everybody for the work. My team, just so everyone knows, our community college staff, They're working nights and weekends to do whatever we can. You know, we're doing things like colleges are using foundation dollars where they can to support students, emergency grants. We've set up a website at the state board. We've had webinars for our college leaders and vice presidents and others just to make sure we're sharing information. The support from the governor's office has been terrific, including the letter that he sent. So we're very appreciative there. I've also been talking with Ruben and Terry about some joint communications. One thing I don't want to forget, we focus a lot on the K-12 population, which is appropriate, but there are a lot of working adults out there as well who need financial aid for college. And so we've got to be thinking about how we partner with the employment community and others to get the word out to folks who are not currently enrolled in K-12, because they're not getting any of these supports. Our community-based organizations and nonprofit partners are doing amazing work, but there's still a lot of work. So I just want to keep the concern level at high, because it's massive. And this, like Mike said, this may very likely continue beyond 1 year. Thank you.
So, Sarah and Sativa, what are the key, let's kind of bring this to conclusion. I have a thought. What are the key priorities for this coming year that we're going to be focusing on? Can you just summarize those for us? Rossi, sorry.
No, I hope you can all hear me now. Yeah.
I think we're gonna have to stand up again. I think it makes a difference.
Okay, sure. So while I really appreciate the need to focus near-term strategies as well as long-term strategies, the current priorities, and especially the two that I've highlighted on the slide today, are focused on longer-term strategies. If I can take a moment to just dive into why those are there, is that in the past, we've heard from the council, we've heard from multiple stakeholders as well, the need to create a transition as seamless from high school to post-secondary as it is from middle to high school. But the key difference really is when it comes to middle school to high school, the students from a system perspective are already enrolled. So, you know, it's sort of more like an opt-out, and so the student is not making an active choice to make that transition. However, from high school to post-secondary, we can think of it more as an opt-in, and so we're all trying to create an accessible and, you know, effective choice architecture, if I may, you know, say so. So understanding this and really guided by that second guiding question, which is what are ways to systematically reduce uncertainty in the enrollment process? What WSAC is highlighting through the priorities is to utilize behavioral science and design thinking to decrease that burden of decision-making on students. And so the first bullet point really is WSAC working with a few pilot institutions and the K-12 like partners to develop an effective guaranteed financial aid messaging strategy that will be sent to students like early in high school. Which again is connected to the SNAP, you know, pathway bill as well. And the second priority is really to address post-secondary access barriers that we've learned from doing design thinking work with students, families, and educators, and to develop an implementation plan. All this to say that, again, these current strategies and priorities are focused on the longer term and really open up to the council and the, you know, leaders here to see if there are priorities that we should be adding in that are very, you know, focused on the near-term strategies. But I would also like give it to Sarah to add.
I throw it into CAI, which is our acronym, not CAI, College Access Initiative. We are all right now focused on the near term. And that is our, like, what are we doing today? What are we doing tomorrow? Figuring what, using the data, like what schools are we calling today? What partners are we reaching out to? And we have plans that we're going to be continuing our virtual event into the summer, support with Otterbot, our texting platform. The events are being recorded, not the student question part, but the presentation components around them, which have to do with what are the common errors, where are students getting stuck in the application, and still even how to go about it, create your FSA ID, create an account, because as was noted, there are still so many students that haven't started that process. And so those events, those presentations will continue to go on through the summer months with partners going out, messaging going out, telling them where they can access those videos. To the point about adults, I think Inez has some conversations in enrollment cluster as well. meetings about that, but we also have credit union as partners. And then other organizations that can help spread the word and get potential students to those resources even after school ends, and then for others during the time they need as well. So just to always, for us, it is on a daily basis. We have a team check-in every other day. It's like, where are we going? What's going on right now? How are we figuring it out and moving it forward?
Well, that's just one thing that has been sitting on my mind heavy is what the summer support is like and the actual bodies on the ground. I was recently at a meeting in Spokane, and a woman from this exact region who does not work summer said, I don't have a source and feeder for my kids. And we are also on the brink of losing the practitioners that are on the ground doing the work from burnout because they're doing the work, or even during times when they're not supposed to. And so as we're thinking about strategies to support students over summer, knowing that we K-12 college and career school counseling staff don't work during the summer, how are we finding ways to compensate, get bodies on the ground to be able to connect with the community to get them to the finish line so that they show up to their seats in the fall.
So Steve, are you saying that, I don't know if it goes into the plan, but you're saying, what I'm clearly hearing you saying, we need to come up with a summer plan, and we're gonna be losing so many of our support people out in the field, so.
Absolutely.
So is that something that Sarah or your team could be giving some thought about how to, and is there anything we have to then do to support that?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we're working on daily right now about what resources can our small but mighty team provide to those that are working, those that are the partners, the organizations, the community organizations, the credit unions who still may have that face-to-face time with students and families when the traditional kind of K-12 system doesn't have access to students anymore. And I think for those in the room, pushing out those resources, those messaging opportunities will be critical in that support.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Linda Kaminsky, president of Yakima Valley College, and I just happen to have some up-to-date data on this that I thought you might be interested in. So, and this goes back to May 1st, because I report on this at our monthly trustee meeting, and Oscar Verduzco, who's our financial aid director, generously gives me updates. So at this time, on May 1st last year, we had 5,091 students already processed. On May 1st of this year, we have 3,217 processed with the FAFSA. With the WASFA, last year we had 281 students processed, and this year we only have 181. So we're 100 students short of where we should have been on May 1st. And there is a little bit of good news. So we've been doing workarounds for our mixed status, because those are the hardest ones. The students who have undocumented parents or parents that don't have access to internet. There are all kinds of complications for those students. And we've been doing workarounds, and I can't tell you in detail what those workarounds are, but evidently they're starting to work. Some of our workarounds are proving to be effective. So I just wanted to share that.
I'd like to propose a friendly action item to the plan. I really think, we gotta dig our way out of this whole, I agree with you, Paul, this is a crisis situation, one that we didn't create, but we're having to react to. But I think all this is not gonna end come the summer, right? And there's gonna be a lot of students or adults that have been left behind. I think, I like to see two things as friendly amendment as an action. I think we should step back and what are the lessons learned out of all this? And how could we done some things, done things differently, or how are we gonna do it? How would we react next time if some type of federal initiative like this rolled out? And then also, what's our recovery plan? I think I think there's probably gonna be additional issues come through. Things are not gonna be perfect this coming fall. And also, what's our recovery plan for those students who somehow got left behind, who didn't fill out applications, or the adults that were somehow missing? So I think it would be good to figure out as an action item, what is our recovery plan for the state? Knowing that we're dealing with a system that's been given to us, and we know we'll continue to have some issues as we go into the next. So that's kind of my friendly amendment to this. I think the council's in support of that. I think we need to kind of do an assessment.
Yes, I agree. I think that we need to continue work into the summer. It is a pocket. But just kind of encapsulate the intensity. I mean, it is a pocket because traditionally, you know, if you want to have your financial aid in place in time to begin the fall term, you have to have had it in at a certain time. We have been communicating to students to let them know of our flexibility. And like Paul said, and referencing what President Kaminsky was saying, what amazing heroes our financial aid folks are, working nights, working weekends, just, you know, and it's not something you can do to just bring in new people and then train them up and get them ready to do process new applications. That's a months-long process to onboard new people. So it's straining an already strained workforce that higher ed has across the spectrum. I think as we're looking forward to how we support you know, endeavors like this in a crisis, is to better equip and prepare institutions of higher ed across the spectrum so that they can support these very high works and a staff that is completely, you know, rotates quite a bit because of the involvement of their work. So I'd like to acknowledge those heroes in the financial aid offices and flag that if we're looking for a future, we're needing to do sustainability on higher ed institutions to prepare for things like crises like this, because you can't just hire new people now. They need to have been supported from the beginning.
So unpopular opinion, maybe. I'm very hopeful that financial aid is going to come through this summer because of the valiant efforts that everybody's putting in. So I see that we all see that crisis and we're doing something about it. I think we're missing a second crisis in the room that we're not talking about. And I'm going to look at page 10 of the strategic action plan draft. The reduction in our enrollments, the biggest drop off in that were for those who were not receiving financial aid, right? Those that are receiving financial aid only went down, say 3%. You know, if you look at the for the 4 years, went down 11% for the 2 years. But those that did not receive aid went down by 17%, 32%. And so I understand and appreciate why we're spending so much time worried about FAFSA, and I get it because there's a lot of efforts being done there. But long term, I think the other crisis that we definitely need to turn our attention to are those students who are choosing not to enroll, that are not receiving financial aid. And that's a second crisis that I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of. Because this summer is what I hope and believe is a temporary crisis. I believe FAFSA will get fixed. I have to believe that, otherwise none of us will sleep. Right? So we're going to believe that gets fixed. We've got a longer term issue on our hands for enrollment that we need to be very strategic about and address. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to frame it, you know, wherever we end up with what we're doing over the summer and on beyond I think it's important to remind everyone, you know, we've been doing this for some time. You do things for many, many years, and you think everybody knows about it like you do, but they don't, right? So we do have now up and live on our website to the public You can look at any high school in the state and see where they stand in FAFSA filings within the last week or so compared to what they did totally last year. We did that frame of where you ended up last year, which is a very aspirational goal, a longer term goal that would extend through the summer. Because it was so hard this year with all the problems in the winter and in the winter, everything was delayed. So to look at where you are now versus where you were at the same time last cycle didn't mean anything for months and months and months, right? So but that's out there for anyone in the state to look at and to help rally around kids where Terry would sharing the information on one particular school district, which may reveal some of the problems that this has been a multi-layered problem in the sense that one population has been particularly beset by system issues has been any student who has what they call mixed status household. Someone in the household may not be a U.S. citizen, and so that's normally taken care of in the financial aid process. The new FAFSA system did not support that for an additional almost 2 months after the FAFSA was technically online. So there's a huge problem with that population, recapturing that population, and it's really tragic. Right? But so also every high school in the state has the ability using our portal to look at and understand what each individual senior has done in terms of filing FAFSA. So you can look and see whether or not a student has filed a FAFSA. If they have filed it, is it in error state or is it complete as far as the federal government would be concerned? And this updates weekly. And we've been doing this for many, many years, so high schools know. The one point I'll share with you that frames how significant the summer is that when you have a disruption like this, there's going to be both time shifting of people's behaviors, which means I couldn't file in October, November, December like I normally could. So maybe there's going to be a lot more FAFSAs filed in January, February, March as time shifting, and then loss is just at the end you end up with fewer, right? So there's probably been time shifting, and unfortunately there's probably going to be loss, which we're going to fight every way we can to minimize or not have that loss. And some school districts have more FAFSAs filed already than they did in previous years. So it's mixed across the state. But if you, what I saw when I looked at the numbers for open in January is for every single week from January until about 2 weeks ago, the end of April, the number of FAFSAs filed by first-time filers, so it's not just high school students, but the whole first-time filers, was going up, was much higher every week than it was the week a year ago. That's time shifting, right? You didn't have time shifting. That wasn't happening. We just had the whole cycle of so many 2,000 this week, 2,000. Just repeating last year's numbers week by week. It's probably getting far worse. Fortunately, for those 4 months, every week was coming in much higher. So when you look, and now that we're into it, the year-over-year numbers are closer than where we are now compared to where you ended up last year. However, last week in April was the first week this year that the current filing, not exceeding filings. So maybe that's just an average of that back on a growth trend. But to me, that tells us how important, the remaining, 3 or 4 months. In fact, you can apply for financial aid in the middle of your academic year. As difficult as that can be, what's the problem can be, you can get an aid award in September or October after having very early. So we're really sort of trying to remediate, fix, solve, patch through everything we can. There will be more federal money coming right now that can go to community partners to support this work. So anything that we can do, and it's not obviously we can't do much without a broad partnership and everybody involved in the process across every level of education, every institution, and us and all of our partners, trying to continue to do this work to maintain, the filing patterns from now through and fall. So, I think that we can either help craft the words a little after, but I think in terms of the plan, something that makes it very clear that there's this broad need to continue to work now throughout the summer, the fall, continue, and then look forward. And we will be able to then digest the numbers, understand lessons learned.
So how do we want, Mike, how do you want to wrap up this section and move on to the, because we're running behind, so.
If someone has, if we can either agree that, it sounds to me like the idea is in the work priorities, there needs to be items about this. If somebody has something specifically they want to propose, otherwise we will craft something and share it with, first with Sativa and then everyone within the next few days to affirm that we captured that adequately. Then we'll incorporate that into the adopted.
I think instead of trying to wordsmith here at the meeting real time, I would suggest that we do that. That make sense? With that early into the process? Otherwise, is the council okay with the general plan with that addition? So I'm seeing a nod on that, so we've got the plan. So that brings us on to the next question.
Amy is ready to.
Amy's ready to go.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Magastos. I serve with the strategy and partnerships team with WSAC. And we're seeking approval for, in addition to this robust and important area of enrollment impacted by the FAFSA changes, we're seeking approval of the additional components of the strategic action plan. We'd like to talk next about affordability, and then student supports and completion, as well as the regional challenge grant. Actually, we're going to look at affordability. I am standing in today in the affordability cluster for Becky Thompson, Director of Student Financial Assistance at WSAC, together with council leads for this work, Jeff Charbonneau and Terry Standish-Kapua. Thank you so much to the cluster team. For affordability, and especially with time limits, I'd like to highlight a new portion of the SAP this year in all of the sections, which is the guiding questions. And then I'll offer, if Jeff and Terry, anything you'd like to add. Affordability, like enrollment, and all of the strategic action plan exists in a little bit of this tension of the urgency of now and the longer term strategic planning that this council and agency are often spending their time on. So the guiding questions in the affordability strategic cluster, I think, exist in that more longer term view, in addition to kind of all the intersections of the challenges of our urgent moment now with FAFSA. So just to point to the guiding questions, to highlight, we're very interested in understanding and having the whole state be able to understand better the effectiveness of the Washington College Grant, improving post-secondary outcomes for Washington students. How can we also better understand the impacts of affordability barriers on families of varying income levels? And I think Jeff Charbonneau spoke to that earlier. For those who are in middle income, how can we understand the barriers and begin to address those challenges as well? And then finally, how can we better align outreach regarding financial aid eligibility and public benefits receipt? That has been an area of legislative change and significant innovation in Washington. And so we're excited to be able to pursue that in the coming year and also be able to measure the impact that alignment has on enrollment and retention. So all of these different strategic clusters are related, and so that we believe is a very important innovation and direction to be pushing on. I'd like to offer Jeff Charbonneau and Terry, if you would like to say an additional word about the affordability cluster kind of areas in addition that you'd like to highlight.
Thank you so much for the introduction on that and the background work that went into this. I think it's important that we really don't lose sight. Again, I'm just going to reference it again, that page 10, which I know is not technically in my section. How we have those students who are not receiving aid are choosing not to enroll, right? And that's a significant issue. And so we have to understand why that is. Is that because of affordability? Is that because of lifestyle choices and what career paths that they want to go into? We've got to double down in this area. You know, this year, we're going to graduate the largest graduating class in Washington State, and then it's going to go down just by sheer population, right? So graduates in K-12 is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. So we're going to understand that reality that we would have declining enrollment based off of population sizes for those first time traditional college students. We've got to understand this issue big time. So we've got to look at affordability with the changing in inflation, the changing in housing costs, median family income, discretionary income is trending and shrinking. And so if they do not qualify for this aid, they are choosing not to enroll. So we've got to look at that from a financial aid standpoint. We've also look at it from a return on investment standpoint, and we've got to be very, very, very clear about that. So I like this first question in here. What do we know about the effectiveness of the Washington College Grant and improving post-secondary educational outcomes for Washington students? Because if that is effective, we believe it is. If that is incredibly effective, can we expand that to recapture some of these other students that are choosing not to enroll? And is that one of our biggest capture points? Terry, I'd love to have you chime in.
Thanks, Jeff and Amy. Thank you, and thank you to Becky as well. I know she's doing good national work on behalf of financial aid programs. I think that the only other two big threads of conversation that the cluster had as the team was putting this together, one, to give voice to the legislature's investments in students in the Washington College Grant have served an additional group of students to the maximum award, but only done it via a budget proviso as opposed to a statutory change. So I do feel as though the final plan needs to really give some visibility to those students who are now getting the maximum, but will not next year unless the proviso is extended or statute is changed. So I think that just making sure that there is no exacerbated decline in financial aid for students, we'll want to set the table for that. The second lane is around state work study and the role of connecting our students to employment here in Washington. So I think that the state work study program is perhaps under highlighted in this particular draft because that's a way that we can help students on the affordability side, but also connect them to employers. And we know that employers, particularly through their HR offices, are powerful tools. Paul, to your observation about connecting with adults, that HR offices, if they have more resources to help communicate with employees, that could be both parents coming back as well as supporting students in this. So those were the two lanes, I think. And there's a couple of little edits that I've shared that certainly hope to see in the next draft.
Thank you so much, Jeff and Terry, and I especially would like to thank Terry for all of the edits and offerings that you shared with us before this meeting, and we're also taking notes of everything that you say, so our final draft can be reflective of the will of the council, so thank you so much. If there's nothing else on the affordability cluster, I'd like to move us along to the next section of the staff, which is the student supports for basic needs cluster. I have had the pleasure of leading this cluster together with some incredible council team members, Mustafa, Cal, and Ruben, as well as other staff and community partners. And so we like to highlight just a little bit on the landscape, and then I'll pass the mic over to Cal to share a bit as well. So the major change within the landscape in this past year that I'd really like to highlight is implementation of the Post-Secondary Basic Needs Act, which is in statute in 2023. It has meant that we've had the first state level post-secondary basic needs focused legislation investment in states statewide for public institutions. It's included navigation, services in all public institutions funded, and as well as planning and assessment by each institution, and really a great collaboration of institutions in WSAC to better understand the prevalence of basic needs across the state. So we're looking forward to post-secondary basic needs surveying in fall and following up on our 2022 survey. Another highlight this year is that we have in statute now a focus on wraparound services for basic needs for students who have conditional scholarships in our workforce and training programs that Inez Olive brought to our attention. That's an important part that's not currently included in our plan, but we're going to add it in the landscape. And I think our priorities within that are reflected there. One more thing I'll note is that we have an exciting proviso in our current budget that funds a housing study for students with low incomes in the two-year college system, which is the first time that we've had that kind of focus, and really the housing insecurity and homelessness issue among all of our students, but at high levels within our community and technical colleges will really benefit by a clear understanding of the extent of that. I'm going to pass it over to Pal, our council member, who's a graduate student, to share a little bit more about the Student Supports Cluster.
All right, yeah, thank you. Thanks so much, Amy. So before diving into the guiding questions, I just want to mention one thing, that a lot of things could be actually put together under the umbrella of basic needs. But while crafting the guiding questions, we are pivoting on 4 of these topics. The first one being the mental health care, affordable housing, food security, and child care. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to create a proactive system based on these 4 topics that will provide support to all the students in the Washington state. So the reason behind creating the proactive system is that we don't want to turn basic needs requirements as an emergency. It is that is something that everyone needs on a day-to-day basis. So that's why we are trying to focus more on the proactive system rather than the emergency support. Having said that, it's not that we are going to completely do away with the emergency support system. It is obviously going to be there, but moving forward, maybe our focus would be shifted a little more towards the proactive system. And there are actually examples in the Washington state of proactive systems like this. For example, there is the National Guard grant stipend, the Breach grant, the passport scholarships, which although they might be addressing different groups of people, but they're all based on the same strategy of having a proactive system and not emergency-based support. So the 4 things that I mentioned, the 4 topics that we are going to focus on, to be honest, at this point of time, we don't exactly know what we are going to do with this, but we are going to work extensively on each of these 4 topics and make sure that the students in Washington have access to these services as a part of their basic needs requirement. We hope that it would have impact on enrollment as well as completion. So that is the guiding questions that we currently have, and with all of your input, hopefully we also have a chance to edit that before the final version comes out. Thank you.
Kyle, thank you so much. Wonderful. It's been really a pleasure to get to work with you, really in our cluster work. Just like to invite Mustafa or Ruben, is there anything you'd like to add?
Comments on this section?
Yeah, I just want to add that I think that our state is moving in a pretty wise direction. I think the Student Achievement Council's research that they've done on basic needs a few years back highlighted a lot of things, and also included in the package today is kind of an illumination of the needs of our students and how many of them are experiencing things like basic needs insecurity, food insecurity, housing insecurity, and then homelessness. And what you've seen in this data and a momentum of the state, mentioned by Powell and others about what the state is doing is finding the reflection that students in four-year institutions and two-year institutions experience about the same amount of needs. So highlighting that and then now incorporating student supports in a public four-year and in a four-year degree path is a smart move from the state. But how do we continue to turn that up, like Powell has been talking about? A lot of things said there, and a lot of it acknowledging the work that WSAC has been doing over the past couple of years, and is part of what is going forward from here on.
Thank you so much. All right, I think we'll move on directly to the completion strategy.
Good morning. Good morning. Hi, everyone. My name is Abby Chen. I have the honor of working with our colleagues on the completion strategy. And what I want to highlight is we have two slides today. We have highlighted on the slides just the changes. So if you're feeling like it isn't a full capture of what's happening in the completion cluster, I would implore you to dive deeply into the document. But some of the pieces that are highlighted here are really some investigation and continued learning agenda areas. And you see those reflected in the guiding questions around noticing that our students are increasingly mobile, really thinking critically about how students pull credits from many other parts of their lives toward meaningful credential attainment, and really thinking about the ways that the pathways to, through, and into the workforce happen for all of our students. And so in the interest of time, because I'm sensitive that our Councilmember Paul said he needed to step away around 10, I'd love to pass it directly to Paul and Evangelina, who I have the honor of working with, to really share some of their thoughts and intentions about what's in the completion strategic plan this year.
Okay, thanks, Abby. Evangelina, are you okay if I say a few words and I'll pass it up to you? Okay, great. Well, first of all, I want to give a huge shout out to Abby and to Inez Olive. We have an amazing team here, so I'm just really proud to serve alongside them and Evangelina. So just highlighting some of the things that is mentioned here. You know, when we think about credential completion, we tend to think of high school to college and then graduate school. And the reality for a lot of individuals is that's not the way that it works. So think about dual credit, for example, right? We have a large percentage of students who begin college early. Think about those who maybe started a 4-year and then transfer to a 2-year and then might transfer back. So how do we think about designing systems that work for all students, right? Noting that in many cases, what we think of as a non-traditional pathway is actually a traditional pathway in many cases. And then the second piece there, non-credit pathways. I'm really excited. Stay tuned. We're going to talk about non-credit. We're going to have a really good conversation. But when we talk about non-credit, I just want to very quickly set the stage. We're talking about badges and micro.
Bubbly things.
Yeah, sorry. Sounds like
tried that in the past.
There we go. I thought maybe I was generating excitement about non-credit, but I don't know. Non-credit badges and micro-credentials, apprenticeships, licensure, industry certifications, personal enrichment, adult basic education, boot camps, the list goes on and on. So we'll talk more about that. I'll hold off on that. But partnerships across sectors. I think everybody in the council knows that we have a 50-year history of working together, the community and technical colleges with our public and private nonprofit 4-year partners. We've got a really good system of transfer and articulation and are always working to make it better. When we talk about student support, we just heard a little bit about that, but I want to highlight in the document, the packet talks a little bit about one example that we're focused on in the community and technical college system related to guided pathways, which is really a redesign of how the student experience to move students toward a credential. But when we talk about student supports, we're also talking about not just academic support like tutoring, advising, counseling. We're also talking about basic needs support, as you heard just a minute ago, diversity and equity centers, veteran centers, disability support services, career services, health and wellness centers, and much more. So all of those things play a really vital role in moving students, allowing them to persist and moving toward a credential there. And then finally, before I turn it off to Evangelina, I want to highlight, you see the guiding questions there. I think there's another slide that talks about some of the initiatives that we're working on in this area. I just want to make sure that council members understand some of these things. So I'm going to very briefly describe them, and the staff can fill in any details if I get it wrong. The Universal Transfer Project is the idea of creating a national credit mobility website that will show credits earned how credits earned elsewhere transfer and apply toward degree programs. So this is led by a national nonprofit. It includes a couple of institutions from Washington, Shoreline Community College and WSU Everett. The NGA skill-based hiring. This is really interesting, and I want to say this can be very scary for higher ed because we're in the business of awarding credentials, and so we think, okay, wait a minute, are we suddenly becoming obsolete? And just because it's scary doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. And this is really focused on the public sector. You've seen more than a dozen governors across the country remove unnecessary bachelor's degree requirements for state jobs, because let's be honest, it is a barrier for many people, including populations of color, low-income individuals who don't have the ability to access those credentials. So the NGA initiative is going to bring 22 states and 1 territory together this year and next year to identify best practices, some emerging opportunities, challenges, stresses, to look at where HR departments, what role they play in this, software systems, all of those things. So Washington is part of that, which is really exciting. And then finally, the last thing is learning and employment records. This is a multi-state agency partnership led by Greater Spokane Incorporated, $150,000 grant from the National Governors Association. I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with LERs. Basically, think of it as a digital wallet, digital resume. One example of that is the Smart Resume, if you've ever heard of that. It really allows people to take advantage of the full breadth and depth of their education, their training, skills, all of those things. Is very dynamic. So this is an opportunity for Washington and 9 other funded states to build a community of practice around LER. So I'll stop there and then turn over to Evangeline.
Thank you, Paul. I think Paul covered everything very well. I only have a couple additional comments. From a community industry perspective, what we captured in these 2 slides in terms of where we're looking at for completion, it really makes a lot of sense, even from an industry employer perspective. Again, echoing what Paul said, we shouldn't fear what may look scary or different. I believe that communities are rallying together to really partner with industry, economic development, and higher education partners to really look at what it takes to create a lattice in their community, a lattice to career pathways approach, which would really benefit all of us to ensure that our workforce is prepared for the work that community needs to be vital. And so we are starting to see communities having a lot of conversation around non-credit or professional or credit for professional learning that we could certainly look at scaling and getting to higher completion numbers. Additionally, by having a more non-traditional approach, like Paul stated, there's an opportunity to get to those adult learners, also for relearning opportunities as jobs get replaced by technology, for example. We have a few examples of that, supported by the Career Connect Washington funding, where you have a focus in the high school, but also an inclusion of the parents. in that program. So looking at it from a dichotomy perspective in terms of creating those pathways for whatever those jobs are in the community. So there's some exciting work happening here. Paul captured the high levels very well. And I think that next year we'll be able to really reflect on some of those things that are already being piloted today.
Thank you so much. I'm going to pull us very quickly back to our second slide in the deck, which is around our equity cluster, and then we'll go to regional challenge grant to round us out. So I know our slides changing isn't quite happening. That's okay, because the equity cluster has one single slide, and that's really to acknowledge that equity. I think you started to hear it. It's really deeply embedded across clusters, across strategic planning efforts, including policy, knowledge development, and practice work. And so what we wanted to do is really just highlight the key milestones. Over many years, there have been discussions around the development of dashboards and emerging work. This one is the second slide, it's early. We're going for equity, yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
We ready for this today. And so the highlight is really that we have live dashboards that talk about our strategic action plan data. And that is a huge milestone from our research team, many folks in this room. And so we wanted to also acknowledge not only are those dashboards available around strategic action plan goals and our broader attainment goal for the whole state, but these will continue to evolve and be refined as we have different data sources, as we can really reflect on what those equity lenses look like around disaggregation of data, those indicators for each cluster area. And so that is work that is ongoing, continually developmental, and also a really big milestone to celebrate. And I'm gonna shout out our team who has worked really hard to do that. Mostly our research team in partnership with folks who ask really good and hard questions about the work that we do. And so with that, I will turn it over to the regional challenge grant. And Crystal, that jumps us ahead like 5 slides.
Thank you for your patience with us, Crystal. Great. Hello, Hannah Lodwick, Associate Director in the Strategy and Partnerships team. We'll be fairly brief here within our presentation, noting time, and that we also will have additional time on the agenda later. The regional partnerships team, specific to the Strategic Action Plan, continue the development of the broader regional partnership strategy to include policy and programmatic work in relationship with regional communities across our state. Updates to the SAP include the emerging work since last year, inclusive of the 2024 requests for letters of interest process to recommend new partnerships for funding, which we will be presenting on later, as well as the extensive 2023 legislative report and subsequent program framework, which provides stories on each funded partnership from the original cohort, as well as the broader program vision. In the next year, our priorities include supporting the funding of new partnerships as a result of the 2024 cycle, and to build further opportunities to center partnership voices specific to the policy development process in alignment with the RCG theory of change. Importantly, the regional partnership approach is one that is intersectional, and it crosses all cluster areas as an innovation hub to inform other areas of policy and program development. So with that, I will pass it to our council chair for further comment.
I just wanted to add a few comments. It's been my privilege to work on as a council lead with the regional challenge grant team. We made this into a separate cluster because there was so much work going on in this area. And as it was said, I mean, this is really, think of this as, this is work that cuts across all of the different clusters. An opportunity for us to innovate in some of those areas, or do some things at the local or regional level. It doesn't necessarily take something to be done at Olympia, but something that could then inform the actions of Olympia. So the team is trying to be very deliberate about this. And you'll see that in what the different quests we made in LOIs this year. Again, folks, we had a special emphasis on adult learners, something we've been talking about for some time. The other thing is that, just want to mention, really been trying to, the team really tried to make, as we're going through this, really try to make sure the council stay abreast of what's going on, communication. So we felt like you were actually part of the journey that the staff had done, because were very excited as they went through this, and so, you know, it was a process of discovery, and so hopefully you got a sense of that, as they were, going through this over the last couple of months, so. But we do have an hour basically to go through this, and so, but it is a separate initiative that we're now highlighting as part of the cluster.
In addition, we have this slide up specific to what the kind of current approach to growth looks like. And again, we'll speak to this later, but you'll see highlighted, we have the new partnerships and result of the 2024 request for letters of interest. In yellow are areas in which there are overlapping in both the two cohorts, as well as highlighted in blue, there are existing partnerships. And we'll further unpack, especially the layers of nuance and complexity around different populations of focus specific to where there are both new and existing partnerships in really important ways. And also want to capture as well an important sort of value of the Regional Challenge Grant is that geography is nuanced and complex. So just want to note that this is counties. Counties are only one sort of understanding, as we also know that there are school district level boundaries, there are tribal land boundaries that are sovereign. And so just want to note that as geography is complex, that this is just sort of one layer to which we will continue to unpack within our later presentation.
Yeah, this is the chart they did for me. But again, I think it's important, if you think about it, it's a year ago, this map is less, you know, we had less areas covered, and it's really showing how our work is starting to impact really regions of the state that we really have not touched upon in the past, and it's giving voice to different regions of the state. I think we saw that last night. People are trying to truly connect with them in meaningful ways, and I think you're starting to see this, and you're starting to feel that impact by this work that's going on throughout really parts of the state that sometimes feel like they're not safe. Any further comments on this before I kind of try to bring this to a conclusion? Okay, so what I'd like to do, we tried to very deliberately this year really renew the whole effort around the clusters and the council involvement along the way, and having hopefully council members feeling that they have had, because this is just not staff work, this is really the work of the council. And I think you've seen that today by hearing various council members speak about this. What I'd like to do, if it's all possible today, recognizing that we do have a section to be added to the enrollment area, that we're going to work on the wording. We'll pass that wording around to the council for final sign off here in the next week or so. But what I'd like to do, if at all possible, to get the council to approve the strategic plan as written, recognizing this is an update. We're going to have a chance at the retreat to step back and think even more broadly. Are there some older initiatives that we want to incorporate into next year's plan? But using this really as a launching point for continued work here in the coming months and through into the next year. So I'd like to see if there's a motion to approve with the addition of the amendment to the enrollment section around the FAFSA, the topic that we discussed. Is there a second? Is there further discussion? Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Then we're going to take, thank you very much. This is very important work. There's so many hours that went into this, right? It's so many people. And we have a lot of hard work ahead of ourselves. Paul, I know you got to step off for a few minutes. I want to recognize Superintendent Chris Reichel has joined us. He's another member of the council. Chris, do you want to say anything before we take a brief break?
Good to see you all. Appreciate the discussion, and just a quick one. I won't be on after 1 or 2 today, but I'll be delivering a message to about 300 superintendents and district leaders around the state as part of a quarterly engagement I have. And my #1 message will be please double down on these last 6 weeks in FAFSA support for kids. We are all in this together for sure. I shared the sentiments earlier. It's tough as we go to summer break. Some of those supports will be lost for kids, but we'll kind of double down and do everything we can to get through the next wave of this thing before our system transitions to summer. So thanks everyone for putting your soul into that. It's really, really critical we're all together.
And Chris, thank you. And as everybody, as you're indicating, is everybody rolling up their shirt sleeves right now and doubling down and it's about people's lives. So with that being said, we're going to adjourn for a little bit behind. We're going to adjourn for only 10 minutes, take a break. And not adjourn. We're going to take a break for 10 minutes and we're going to come back and we will go into our next topic. Okay. Oh.
Oh, I know.
About
Yeah.
a
Work
minute.
out.
Thanks. Yeah. We are, oh, I'm actually amazed, you're only 15 minutes behind, which is probably a record for us. We're gonna go to our next. We're gonna go to our next item on the agenda, which I'm really excited about. It's a community discussion around innovative strategies to increase post-secondary enrollment. So we just got through talking about enrollment. We're also though thinking about, we got our own immediate things we're worried about, the FAFSA completion and everything else, but also second, we're gonna be looking down the road and what are we gonna do to really jumpstart some of the things we're trying to get done from post-secondary enrollment standpoint. So we have a discussion set up here for this. Mike, do you want to say anything, or who should I ask?
I can take it. Rafi here. Yeah.
Rob, okay, Rob, okay, see, you didn't know. Rob. Okay. Rafi, you're in charge.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody again. This is Rafi Sudhakar. I get the pleasure to introduce this amazing, people here, amazing community that, has come all the way from different parts of this region. So here's a quick framing for you all. Each of the partners present here represent the community in different ways. They are from various sectors. And their shared values of equity, engagement, belonging, and stewardship not only has brought us together, but they're keen on breathing life into these values. The health and wealth of the community lies in ensuring a thriving education pipeline and an economy where everyone has the opportunity to contribute and reap the benefits right here in their backyard. So today we will hear from each of them how they're intentionally building this plan for themselves and for the community by being thoughtful, present, and creating a framework really in partnership that addresses the needs of their community. So let's dive in and hear from this esteemed panel. And I will pass the microphone to Andrew Watts, who's Chief of Staff and President Jim.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Very often the Chief of Staff jumps in front of the President, and it usually goes better when it does. Jim Wolpar, President at Central Washington University. I'm finishing my third year. Thank you to Chairman Vincent for convening us, and to all of the board members, and to Executive Director Miati and the staff here at WSAC. What a fantastic convening. I also greatly appreciated the wonderful welcome from Chairman Lewis and the hosting that is being done today on the part of Heritage University and President Sun. So Andrew Morris, Chief of Staff and Interim Vice President for University Relations, will speak momentarily, as will Trevor Green, Superintendent for Yakima School District. A really rich partnership that we've been developing in Yakima. I'm also very pleased to have Steve DuPont, our Government Relations Officer, is here, but I will just have to tell you, more important than Steve or Andrew or me, is that we have three of our student leaders here, Michelle Carrillo, Nick Villa, and Malika too. You all will wave. It's great to have you all. All members of the Associated Students at Central Washington University Board of Directors, and they are really why we do this work. And so it's wonderful to have you all in the room while we talk about this. We talk a lot about the transition, and Robbie, you mentioned this a minute ago, between middle school and high school and college, and the way in which we need to make it seamless and integrated. And I appreciated the framing that you gave, which is middle school to high school is really, it's an opt-out option. People are already in that pipeline. High school to college is an opt-in pipeline. I actually think about it differently. When you think about middle school to high school, students are in one system, and they stay in one system. When they go from high school to college, they're having to navigate multiple systems. College and high school, Running Start, AP, community technical colleges, universities. And unfortunately, in those multiple systems, there's lots of cracks. And this is where our students fall through those cracks. Our goal must be to close those cracks and to weave together the multiple systems that hold our students so that there are no cracks that anybody can fall through. To do this will take a disruption. not of the K-12 system, not of the higher ed system. We're all doing great. We can just keep doing what we do. The disruption is in the breach between those systems. And the question is, can Washington lead in this disruption? We're doing a lot. Can we weave all of the stuff we're doing together? I also, as I think about systems, am always reminded of the fact that systems are there and set up to privilege the few. People like me, quite frankly. My father was a college professor. He was an administrator. There is no surprise to anybody in my family that I'm a college president. Systems are also set up to perpetuate themselves. So our work must be to upend those systems. And to talk about that, I want to provide a context. Now I'm going to talk about some things that you all have already talked about today, so I'll reiterate some things. It's stuff you know. If you want to know what keeps President Kaminsky and I up at night, this is some of the things. So I'm going to start with some national context, but then also some state context. Jeff, you mentioned earlier that the students who are getting aid, those numbers fell off. But the students who weren't getting aid, those numbers fell off even bigger. Why is that? Well, the public perception of higher education has dropped. In 2015, according to a Gallup poll, 57% of Americans had confidence in higher education. That's down to 36% in 2023. That's 8 years and over a 20 percentage point drop. Also along party lines, like so many things in the United States. Despite this perception, there are quite a few reports that show that attaining a post-secondary degree is valuable and worth it and the right thing. So, the Washington State Higher Education and Labor Market Report, the Helm Report 2023, looked at unemployment rates among individuals with no high school diploma, 5.5%. If you have a bachelor's degree, 2.2%. Median weekly earnings, no high school diploma, $682 a week, bachelor's degree, $1,432. Lifetime earnings, if you have a high school degree, $1.6 million. If you have a bachelor's degree, $2.8 million. We also know that employers find value in higher education. I want to talk about two surveys. The NACE 2023 survey, that's the National Association of Colleges and Employers, indicate that 70% of employers say that bachelor's degree is required for entry-level jobs. That's a change from 10 or 15 years ago. They found that 75% of employers rated university education as high or very high quality. And in that same survey, 91% of graduating seniors said that they would do it all the work. They know that that education set them up for success. Another survey I follow, the American Association of Colleges and Universities, AAC&U, in 2023 found that 80% of employers strongly agree or some would agree that higher education prepares graduates to succeed in the workforce and that getting a college degree is worthwhile. AAC&U focuses on the specific skills that students need during college, and they talk about the fact that those skills are far more important than the major. They actually don't care what major students get. They care about what they learn and how they're prepared for the workforce. So things like oral and written communication, critical and creative thinking, complex problem solving, those have been skills for a very long time. But in the last 10 years, there's a set of skills that have changed tremendously. The question I ask is, are we preparing our students for this future? So things like adaptability, working effectively in teams, working with people from different backgrounds. In fact, employers say that ability to work with people from different backgrounds is the one that is becoming increasingly important for innovation, creativity, and the strength of industry and business. I think about what's happening across the United States as we're shutting down efforts to increase equity and inclusion and diversity. Here's another piece of national context that is interesting and concerns me. The Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities just approved the first 3-year bachelor's degrees. These are not 120 hours that have been condensed down to 3 years. These are 90 credit hours bachelor's degrees. They're in applied business management, family and human services, software development, applied health, and professional studies. So this is the national landscape that we are facing. Higher Learning Commission, which is the accrediting body in the Midwest, is right behind WSAC. They also will be authorizing 3-year bachelor's degrees. So what do? Public perception of higher education is down, yet all of the data demonstrates to us that degrees are important for the jobs of the future and that provide significantly higher wages. Meanwhile, some universities and agencies are rethinking the bachelor's degree. All right, so let's jump into the state. We've talked a lot about this, and I appreciate the way in which WSAC is leading this. There's an interesting disjunction between the WSAC goal of 70% and the Washington Roundtable goal, in that they focus on different age groups. What's interesting is that to get to our 70% goal will require 200,000 more Washingtonians to get some kind of credential. We will have to focus on non-traditional students. We're going to have to bring more students back into the pipeline. To simply focus on the students who are in high school now and getting them to transition is really, really important for the long-term future. But for the short-term future, we need to do something different for the non-traditional students. The pandemic slowed us down, no question. We dropped from 59% to 50% of our students who go on to post-secondary education. The hardest hit students are those from low-income backgrounds, first-generation students, students from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds. That's the student body that Central serves to a large extent. And this is the group of students that needs us the most in this moment. What they need is for us to show up differently than how we have been showing up. Status quo is not going to work. We need to become student-centered and success-focused. We talk about FAFSA completion, we all know this. The fact that we leave $60 million a year on the table in Pell Grant, state of Washington. Imagine what that infusion of $60 million coming in to help our students get through higher education would do. As part of that need to make sure that our students are not just completing some college, accruing some debt, and then leaving for personal reasons or financial reasons, Central added the Associate of Arts degree. We have about 50 to 100 students a year who are juniors or seniors who leave Central because they can't afford it any longer, or they have some kind of crisis in their family, and they need to go out into the world and back to work, but they have no credential. They have college, they have debt, and no credentials. So we've added the AA, and we're reaching out to those students saying, you can get Central's AA if you'd like. All right, what's at stake? I want to talk about two things that are at stake as I think about the work we're doing at Central and then in partnership with lots of folks like Trevor, like Jeff, all across the state. The first thing that's at stake is that we've got to provide better support for businesses and industries and their ability to fill well-paying jobs. Our business and industry can't keep recruiting from outside the state of Washington. This is a great place to live. We've been successful at that. But we need thriving businesses and industries that are part of our communities and giving back to those communities. In the next 6 years, we're going to add another 500,000 jobs. Most of those jobs are going to require a bachelor's degree or post-secondary degree. Washington is in the top 5 states in the nation with the largest share of jobs requiring post-secondary education. That's stunning. If we don't recognize that that is a different kind of landscape for us than many other states, I don't know what it is. So the second thing I want to say in terms of what's at stake is the ability to create intergenerational economic mobility. It's our students, their families, and their communities that are at stake. There is a moral imperative to this work. It's not only an economic imperative, it is a moral imperative to this work. The WSAC, there's a recent WSAC report that demonstrated that those students who qualified for need-based aid and who are in the bottom 50% of the economic background moved ahead of their families in income within 3 years of graduating. Talk about a change and a shift. All right, some solutions. Our solutions, you all have been talking about them. I love the strategic plan. I'm a fan of strategic plans, as long as they don't get in the way of innovation and doing the real work and rolling up their sleeves. Sometimes they do that, sometimes they sit on a shelf. Strategic plans have got to motivate us. They've got to be inspirational, and they've got to really lead to change. Our solutions must be based on a student-centered and care-based innovation and collaboration approach. We have to abandon a scarcity mindset. There are more than enough students to fill all of our seats. across all sectors in any kind of post-secondary education you could possibly imagine. So how do we more fully integrate high school and post-secondary education to close those cracks in those systems? I want to offer 4 ideas which we're all working on and which we've heard about, but I think we really need to double down on and take seriously. So the first bold idea is that we've got to take an ecosystem approach. School districts, community and technical colleges, universities, Running Start, college and high school, AP, all of those things have got to be woven together in a seamless way so that our students aren't even aware of the fact or troubled by the fact that they have to figure out what credits I've got, where it's going to count, what it's going to count for. That is not their job. It is not their job to figure that stuff out. That's ours, and we better get on it. Some of this is happening. Zilla High School has an AA partner with a partnership with Central, Eastern, Yakima Valley College. This is great. That's one way in which we can do that kind of work. And we just heard about another partnership like that up in Spokane. Yakima Valley School District, we'll hear from Trevor in a minute, in partnership with Central, is working on integrating college and high school courses into a 4-year program for students in high school so that they're walking through college as they go through their high school experience. And we're trying to do it in a way that also elevates the kinds of careers and businesses and industries that we know are needed in Yakima Valley. So one of the first courses those students take is a health science course. Can we take that work to the next level? Can we take students who graduated from your high schools, who are health science majors, juniors and seniors, and take them back into that health science course in 9th grade so that those students can talk about the experience that they have and why this matters? We know that those students in high school listen far more to their peers than they do to you and me. Sorry to say that. All right, second, we need to build clear articulations and pathways. We do have a 50-year history, I think Paul said this, of working together across all sectors. It's great that we do that, but there are still so many cracks in that system that we've created. We've got to start accepting each other's credits. We've got to create pathways where it's very clear what it is the students are doing and how it's going to count, how it's going to add up, and how it's going to get them a job at the other end. One of the things we're doing with Yakima Valley Tech, the Skills Center in Yakima, is to build stackable, articulated coursework in their vocational programs in high school, like business administration, construction, engineering, teaching, health science. So students can see the pathway and articulated coursework while they're in high school and know how that will transfer directly into programs that we have at Central. They can finish their high school degree, get a good paying job, but know that they can come back to finish their bachelor's degree with credits already achieved and guaranteed by Central that they will count towards that bachelor's degree. We need to do more of that, more stackable and transferable credentials that prepare students for the workforce. At Central, we have a lot of internal work to do. We have complications and convolutions in our curriculum, and working closely with the faculty to understand the way in which that is a barrier to our students. It needs to be, we need to be able to hand a student a piece of paper, and it should be very clear to them how to navigate their way into and through college and out into the workforce. And we're talking about first generation students, multilingual students. Those students should be able to take that piece of paper and figure this out. In the Council of Presidents, we're working on clear articulations of college and high school coursework across all 6 public universities. We want to say if you take a Central College and high school course, here's how it's going to count if you go to Western. And we're going to guarantee that coursework will transfer and count in very particular ways, not just as electives, but actually as coursework towards the general education program. We would love to develop the transcript, college and high school transcript. Next step is to work on Running Start courses, partner with our college and community and technical colleges. We need to make we need to do all this work so that our students don't have to do the work. That's on us. There are lots of other barriers. WSAC has been addressing these. These came up in, Amy, you talked about this. We've got to remember that the barriers are not just about curriculum and not just about pathways. It's also about basic needs. Food and housing insecurity. I remember talking with a student the end of my first year as president, I was walking into the student union, and the student was walking next to me, and he was African-American male, whistling. I was like, goodness, you're happy, what's going on? He goes, I'm gonna graduate. Just went to the registrar's office, and I'm gonna walk across that stage. Congratulations, that's really fantastic. He says, you don't understand. I had a choice. Pay my tuition, pay my rent. I've lived in my car for the last 2 quarters, so I could walk across the stage. That is not a choice that a 20-year-old should have to make. Mental health, childcare, transportation. Not as reactive and not as an emergency, but because we know that these are the supports that we need to provide to the students so they don't fall through the cracks. How do we do that? Third, and I'm going to say this is really important. I've heard this from the roundtable. I hear this from business and industry, and I hear this from our alum. We need to maintain rigor in all that we do. One of the things I love about our students is that they are far smarter than I was when I was their age. They can jump over any bar that we give to them. If we lower that bar, they'll jump over that bar that's low. But if we put that bar high, they will be able to perform at those levels. There's no question about this. So for Central, for college and high school courses, what this means is that we certify the teachers that have their master's degree, but then we partner with them on their learning outcomes for the high school class, the university class. The faculty visit those classes, and there's a real close partnership and an ecosystem that we're building in the college and high school. Last, I'll touch very briefly on FAFSA completion. Jeff, I love what you said. Got to remember that this is one piece of it. This is an emergency. We will get through this, but we've got to remember that there is a comprehensive approach that we need to take to getting students into higher education. This last year, Central hired 2 financial coaches who were working with our own students on developing financial literacy to drive down their debt, and we've been successful at that, but also going out into the high schools and working with the high school students so that they understand what it is that's available to them, and that we've had a lot of success with that. We want to build financial literacy and FAFSA completion into our college and high school courses so that students, while they're taking their college and high school course, learn financial literacy, but then also complete the FAFSA. Again, as part of that seamless transition. All of this work needs to be done in culturally responsive and culturally sustaining ways, based on the region that we're working in. This is part of the reason that a partnership is so incredibly important. We have to take a community and a local approach to this. What that means is lifting up the histories, the languages, the literacies, the traditions that are part of the cultural wealth of a population. Honoring that and recognizing the way in which that actually adds to the richness of the university experience. I'm going to make one final point, and then I'm going to turn it over to Trevor and Andrew, and that is that we need business and industry to be part of this journey. This is not a higher ed, post-secondary sector issue. This isn't a K-12 issue. What I have heard from students in various communities is, I'm going to stay in this community. I don't see jobs here that require me to go to college. I'm not going to go to college. How do we get business and industry to locate in communities so that students understand that going to college is going to make a meaningful difference? And how do we connect those business and industries back to the communities so that we have thriving business and industry, but also maybe most importantly, thriving communities? This is about changing the trajectory of students' lives, their families' lives, and communities, not just of students going on to college. As we move into this breach and engage this disruption, it's going to be uncomfortable. And it's going to upend everything. I don't think we've started upending everything. I love what I said at the very beginning. Systems are going to push back against this disruption. Our systems are designed to stay in place. Systems are not going to let us upend them easily. They like the status quo. I love what Paul Francis said. Just because it's scary doesn't mean you should do it. Thank you all so much. I'm going to hand it over to Trevor. what's the signal for the hook? I don't know how long I have, but you've just given me a mic and no time limit, so. You're mine for as long as I get, I guess. So my name is Trevor Green. I'm the superintendent of the Yakima School District. More importantly, I'm the grandfather of Liam and Lucy. And I'm the great grandson of Haggai and Yehola on my father's side from the Muskogee Creek Nation. And this is my adopted homeland. It's not my homeland, but I attended elementary, middle school, and first year of high school out in White Swan and Mount Adams area. So I remember being out at White Swan and I thought the Toppenish was too big. I came into town, Toppenish was a metropolis. And so it's good to be back here. And I see on my right here, Henry, my older brother here, Strong from White Swan, and I'm glad to be here with him as well. And I look at your notes here, I look at the categories that we have listed, and I don't even have to look at them to know that with Native Americans, we're at the bottom of everything. So when you're looking at the percentage, I represent about the 1% or below of success that we see across all demographics and minority groups. Unlike President Wolport, I think my family would be surprised that I'm where I'm at. So I appreciate him sharing his reality, and all of our realities are different. I wake up every day knowing that I'm in a position that not too many people are in. I think I'm one of 3 out of 295 superintendents in the state who are of Native American descent. I also think it's important to recognize that when I was selected as superintendent here in Yakima, what meant the most to me was having tribal council here at the Yakima Nation endorse my superintendency. I don't take that lightly. That's something that is really special to me. So I don't have patience for the system to work slow, and I appreciate what's been laid out by President Wolpart about an ecosystem, about having partnerships and developing pathways and maintaining rigor. I believe in all of that, and I know that systems push back, but I also know that systems push back because people push back. And it's the people that cause the issues from saying, we can't do this, or they said we can't do this, or it can't be done, when that really comes from this internal belief that we're not willing to move off the status quo. So for me, I don't have, I'm impetuous, I think a little bit. I'm trying to temper what I want to say here today, because I really want to challenge the council to live up to what I'm looking at here in your adopted strategic plan, because it calls out right at the very center, equity. And I look underneath Washington Student Achievement Council, education, opportunity, and results. And those opportunities are different, and they have to have different pathways. And if we're not willing to create those pathways, and we're willing to talk about them and talk about them and talk about them, but not get it done, then we're not benefiting our students. Before I was superintendent, I was a principal here in Toppenish, just right down the road. And actually, I think I'd like to ask Jeff, how long have you been at Zillow as a teacher?
2001.
So 2001 to teacher all the way up. So yeah, 23 years. And he's done some amazing things. He's developed great pathways for students. He's created a system for students in his system to achieve at a level that is truly amazing. And I really admire the work that he has done, and he really serves as a beacon to other leaders around to follow in his footsteps. The challenge that we see in public education, the K-12 system, is the longevity of principals and superintendents is not typically that long. So to have somebody that's part of a system for 20 plus years and be able to build that system is one thing, but how can we create systems then to truly be something that we could scale up or scale down and that could permeate our entire state? And I think what I'd like to just share with you is, as a principal, I found it very unequitable for our students to have to travel and have an equity of access issue to leave Toppenish to go to Yakima Valley College, which was a great opportunity. And it was not about going to Yakima Valley College. It was about how do we get the students to Yakima Valley College from a very rural setting, and who are the kids that have the transportation to get there, and who are the ones that do not. So when he tells a story about the student that says, you don't understand, I was living in my car, I have that same story from an individual who we unfortunately had to take him home one day from school. He had some poor choices that took place. And I'll give you a little bit of an education here out on the res. I drive what's typically called a res car. So that gets you from point A to point B. It's nothing beautiful. It just gets you from point A to point B, and that's how I roll. I don't really care about what my vehicle looks like. And as we were walking out to my car to drive this young man home, my assistant principal turned to me and she said, well, let's take your car. And I knew she was saying, let's take your car, because the student that we were transporting was grungy, unkept, little, challenging behavior-wise. And what I heard from her in that moment was, I don't want him riding in my car. So we got in the car, he gets in the back, and as I'm sitting there, he says, Mister. I said, yes. He goes, is this your car? And I go, yes. And she kind of laughed, and I said, yes, this is my car. And he goes, this is a really nice car, mister. And it wasn't. And then we drove him home to a double wide trailer with windows broken out that he lives in the winter and in the summer. And that's the reality of our students. And it's not the reality that we have or that our teachers have when you're looking at a demographic that is typically white middle-class women in the K-12 education system. We all have great intentions, but we have to have that connection, and we have to create these pathways for students to succeed. So as a principal, what I recognized was it was inequitable to have students who had access to be able to drive and those that didn't have to. And I think that's what Jeff has built in Toppenish, is being able to, in Zilla, is to have those students stay at Zilla and be served. What I envision is our opportunity to partner with four-year institutions to create an opportunity for students to stay in high school and to leave high school with some type of certificate, so that then they can navigate a system that is, again, built to put obstacles in front of them. So when I have a student that leaves Toppenish High School, when I was a principal, and then comes even to this institution and can't navigate past a secretary of admissions, and then decides, I'm not going to pursue higher education because I can't get past the secretary, it's easier just to give up because there's no expectation beyond that of the individual or the system that we have in the K-12 system to motivate beyond what maybe somebody would see in their own context. So as you look at me, one of the things that we've been able to do in Yakima is create an opportunity to get a two-year degree, an AA degree. Unfortunately, it's through Arizona State University. And I'm not happy about having a partnership with an out-of-state institution, let alone Arizona State University, so far away. But the problem was there was nobody that was willing in state to develop an AA degree for students to earn while they were in high school. And the system is built for people to protect what's theirs. And again, you're now getting the information according to me, right? I don't know what the reality is being in other institutions, but my perception is my reality. And my perception when these barriers are going up and we have colleges or universities that don't want to participate is that that's just another excuse to maintain the status quo and to have the haves have and the have-nots have not. And fortunately, I was taught that you don't take no. No just doesn't mean no, it means not now. And so when we found a barrier in one university and one college and another university and another college, then I started looking at Texas, then Oklahoma, and then finally Arizona State was a university that said, you know what, we will partner with you for an online opportunity for your students to earn an AA degree. And they can stay in school, they can get their high school diploma, they take 1 or 2 classes every semester until they complete the program. And those students are now just finishing up their sophomore year. I would much rather partner with an internal university in the state, but again, there are barriers that are in place. So until those barriers start coming down and people see that there's going to be a way to do this, whether you want to be a part of it or not, much like when I went to, anybody here from WSU? Okay, then I can talk about, okay. Because I'll give you my experience at WSU. So speaking at WSU, and I did earn my superintendent's credential through WSU. But I spoke with WSU and I said, this is what I want to do. And I'm on the cusp of starting with Arizona State University. And this was 2 years ago plus, right around this time, maybe a month earlier. And I said, if you will partner with us next year,
I will back out of our partnership with Arizona State. I have not signed yet. I'm going to sign next week. We'll make this work. And the question that I got from WSU was, well, how much are you paying for a credit? And I said, well, you don't want to know, for one. And I said, well, you're not going to tell us? I said, no, we're paying zero this first year because it's funded through the Gates Foundation. Then every year thereafter, it's going to be 200 per course. And they looked at me like I was crazy because they were looking at charging much, much more for that opportunity. So then the conversation switched to, well, if they earn an AA degree at Arizona State, we are not going to accept that, most likely at Washington State University. I didn't have a dog in the fight anymore. And what I said to WSU, one of my alma mater, was, I don't care. Because our kids then are going to become little Sun Devils down in Arizona, and they're not going to be, Huskies or Cougars or Wildcats, because people don't want to engage and want to point out what the deficiencies are in what we're trying to achieve to tear down the barriers and have an equity of access opportunity for all of our students. Those who don't have cars, those who have parents who don't know how to navigate a high school system, let alone a higher education system. If we can continue to provide the wraparound supports that we have established in the high school and help them achieve and attain that credential without leaving high school, it doesn't take away from a running start. It doesn't take away from other opportunities. What we're doing is creating multiple pathways, because like it says on your banner, opportunity is not just one pathway. Opportunity can be several different pathways, because all of our students have taken different routes and have different lives that they live in, different realities. And so I totally agree with everything that was shared with President Woodward and all of the information that he has shared, the documentation. But I also then go back to your own document on the strategic plan. And I know that we can achieve a higher attainment of credentials, that 70% goal, which I know is 24 to 28 age group. If we even had this at the high school level, we would have students that would step away for a while, come back, those numbers would go up. And again, I will tell you that we're not taking away from colleges, we're not taking away from universities, we're providing access for students who otherwise would not have access and would fall through the cracks that were spoken about with President Woodward. So we want to make sure that those cracks don't exist, but it has to take not only the creative thinking, the conversation, but then the action for us then to do something about that. And that's what we're trying to achieve in Yakima, is to continue to tear down those barriers. And what we've seen is other institutions, other pre-K-12 systems in the state already embrace this opportunity. If Wade Smith were here, the superintendent of Walla Walla, he's now in his first year at the Arizona State program. And the reason he's doing that is the same reason that we were doing that. It's because we cannot wait for a system to change and finally say that we're ready to make this adjustment, because every year we're losing a generation of students that are coming through the system, and we have an opportunity to change lives and impact generations. That's truly what we do with education, is we not only change that life, but we change the life of every one of those descendants down the line. And if we're not doing it now, then we're wiping off an entire class of students across our entire state at a time where we know, when we're talking about the attrition in education, we're seeing that in public education. Chris could verify this, Superintendent Reichel. We're down 45,000 students in public education in the state of Washington since the pandemic. I think we're now somewhere just over 40,000 now. Some have come back, but they're not coming back like they used to. And if we don't do something different and just continue to talk about doing something different, they're going to go find other places where they can be successful. And with that, I just want to thank you for your support of students in our state. And my charge once again is don't let the conversation get in the way of the action, because the action is where it truly matters for our students.
Thank you very much, Jim and Trevor, and thank you very much, Washington Student Achievement Council, for the opportunity to be here today with you all and to talk really about the work that the partners that you see kind of at this side of the table have been doing in the breach. We, as President Wolpart mentioned earlier, are facing the adaptive challenge of credentialing an extra 200,000 Washingtonians 25 to 44. That's twice the size of the city of Yakima. That is a substantial challenge in front of us, but it's in front of us, it's not between us. I'm reminded in this work by what Margaret Wheatley and Deborah Fries referred to as moving from hero to host. And that is rethinking the concept and approach of leadership from a person who sits on a high hill and demands change or makes rules in isolation from the communities they seek to impact, to one that actually serves as host and convener, listening to the communities and the people that they seek to impact and cultivating those ideas for the purpose of driving change. And that's really the purpose and the approach that Central Washington, as a regional comprehensive university, effectively a steward of place, is playing in the life of the communities throughout Central Washington. Over the last couple of years, we've been very intentional at building partnerships that stretch as far as Okanagan County and down actually to the lower valley here in Yakima, the Yakima Valley, to help bring about solutions to the challenges that President Wolpart and Superintendent Green have highlighted. The opportunity to envision pathways to education that meet students physically where they're at, but also developmentally where they're at. Aligning also with our programmatic offerings, dynamic opportunities that contribute to workforce demand now and into the future. We also need to make sure that we're living into the challenge and the opportunity that President Wolpart highlighted about making sure that the business and industry profile here is conducive to gainful employment opportunities that span multi-generations. That starts now. And so we have launched a new department at Central called Business and Community Services that is also partnering with that same region to connect opportunities that bring businesses, industries to the region. And a couple of the documents that have been put forward for discussion today, one of which is in your application materials, evidence the work that we are doing as a community, but also point to the need for continued discussion and action. I want to reference just briefly our future convening summary. This was a gathering, as the document and agenda materials, of educational leaders and community leaders that came together in February, thinking about that challenge of how do we as a state confront the 200,000 credential shortfall that we have to meet 70% degree attainment from 25 to 44. How do we do that work in a way that is also responsive to the needs, challenges, and opportunities facing specifically the Central Washington region? And what I appreciated about that conversation was we didn't just think about it about the snapshot in time of the college experience, but rather we took a systems and a structure approach, connecting the moment that a child is born through the life cycle. And that, I think, points to the challenge ahead of us. It's not just about those of us in this room more tightly collaborating on bold and audacious goals of increasing degree attainment by 200,000, credential attainment by 200,000 in the next 10 years or so, 25 to 44-year-olds. I think it's also about reimagining our social structure in Washington State. It's about living into the call that our stakeholders at that convening said is access to universal early childhood care, where we know that when a young person younger than 5 experiences poverty and experiences that through 15, they are significantly more likely to live in poverty for the rest of their lives. That means they're not pursuing post-secondary education or vocational training opportunities. It means that the family that they're living in is also experiencing those same systemic barriers. That means we have to rethink, reimagine the way that we're delivering, financing higher education, the way that we're delivering early childhood resources, the way that we're thinking about the support structure from the opt-out system that President Wolpart mentioned, so that we can truly provide a signal from access to true opportunity throughout one's life. It means that we have to create interventions that allow for an individual who might become a parent during high school to be able to see through their degree program. And it also means that we have to provide warm, cohesive opportunities, many of which President Wolpert and Trevor just referenced, that allow for flexibility, that allow for stackability, and really need to be done at a scale not yet seen. It means in post-secondary education, we need to be much more efficient and coordinated than we have been. And we have an incredible opportunity right before us in the college and the high school program and the removal of the financial barrier. Now we need to greatly expand the number of qualified instructors that can allow for our school districts to live into this opportunity for our young people. It also means that we have important opportunities to be more efficient and effective in how our college and high school is coordinated. And that doesn't mean taking away opportunities for one institution. It means simply collaborating and being more efficient and organized. And how can we think about from the user experience, what we already know about our students and the use of technology to say digitize transcripts for the first time and create seamless pathways of transfer that remove barriers and burdens on the student and their family so that they can efficiently navigate our ecosystems. I also think about the role of multilingual and personally tailored interventions and support structures. How can we as a system regionalize those kinds of opportunities without ego, without scarcity, without competition, and with a true care for the experience of our students? And tapping into our workforce ecosystem, how can we think about reaching the adult learner with a family who isn't going to uproot their lives and travel to a physical location, and also might not be necessarily vocationally interested in a traditional degree program, but rather a high quality micro-credential or stackable credential of some kind that allows them to get that next promotion in their current opportunity or pursue that opportunity they once thought was impossible. And so in order to do that work, not only have we been preparing for conversations, and I appreciate Council of Presidents leading, about how do we as a sector collaborate towards a 70% degree attainment goal and provide thought leadership in the sector. But it's also about pulling the region in right now to develop high impact and scalable strategies that could serve as a high impact model for the rest of the state. And so I'm grateful for Trevor and the Yakima Valley School District. I'm thankful to the South Central Workforce Council, our partners at Yakima Valley College, and WSAC and COP for being thought partners with us. We've submitted applications for congressionally directed spending that help us develop pilot programs here in Yakima that expand micro-credentialing or short-term credentialing opportunities. We've also submitted applications for congressionally directed spending to help further accelerate business siting and retention here in the region and throughout Central Washington. We need to do this work equitably, culturally responsibly, and we need to keep it centered on the people that we seek to serve. And so I'm excited about questions and dialogue here today, but just know that we are committed to this work and listening and serving as hosts at the future of our region. Thank you.
Let's open it up for questions. Gives a lot of food for thought. Let's open it up to questions, thoughts, comments. Be interested to hear from the students here as we get into this section of the meeting.
Yeah, it was fantastic information about the collaborations that Central and the Yakima region is diving into and has been diving into. It's really really highlights the need that our state has. I mean, President Walpar mentioned that we are 5th in the nation for industry's need in post-secondary attainment. But what we also know is we're 48th in the nation in post-secondary attainment. So there is a huge separation there. We are a state that is a great influxer of educated folks, right? So we rank really highly in the amount of degrees that people in Washington have. Unfortunately, we're importing a lot of them. Can industry sustain that? Can our state sustain that? We're also living in a state where it's harder to recruit people from out of state, and while salaries are relatively high in Washington state, it's becoming more and more difficult for us to convince people to move here because it's also not in par with the cost of living in this state. And they're showing greater and greater need for us as representatives of higher ed and K through 12 to motivate post-secondary attainment in whatever form possible. And these are our wonderful highlights. I love what we're hearing around college and the high school, what's available to happen through the flexibility of running START and being able to offer online courses. Institutions like Central and many others are nimble and ready to meet. And unfortunately, with the WSU experience, who is not a dual credit offering institution, they don't have a college and the high school program or a running START program. So there are institutions though, like Central and now Western and so many other, and Eastern, who is in the news recently, doing amazing things with collaborations. And how do we build upon those, I think is the charge that we're hearing. And as a council member, I'm ready for it. I'm glad.
Disruptor you are. A disruptor, yeah. That's the kind of way to talk about me. Hey, I just want to give a huge appreciation to Trevor, Jim, for coming here. Trevor, you were very kind to me earlier in some of your comments. I was waiting for the but. It really has been a great experience being in this valley for over 23 years. I'm trying to do this work. Some highlights that I like to talk about on the positive side of things. In Zillow, we've leveraged college and the high school course, CTE dual credit, and our commitment to Running Start to help our students work towards that AA degree. When we started this work, there was a lot of folks that thought if you do too much college and high school, we're going to lose our Running Start students. But in fact, as soon as we were able to announce that we were so close to an AA by partnering with a few Running Start credits, the number of students involved at Zillow High School in Running Start through YVC this year is actually up compared to last year. We have more students that are involved in that program. And yet we as a high school are retaining more FTE because of the increase in the funding model, the increase of our opportunities for our students. So these partnerships can work. It's not taking away from anyone, it's lifting all boats. If we are going to get to that 70% attainment, just imagine if we were able to get 10 or 15% of our high schoolers to graduate high school with an AA degree at the same time, how far that would go towards reaching that 70%. But that's also, I want us to not think of an AA in the high school as the ending point. It shouldn't be. It should be the launching point, right? It should be a rethinking of the 4-year experience of traditional university. My son, as a high school student, will graduate next year, class of 2025. Will graduate with an AA degree because of the work that he's done through YVC and the rest. And I've talked with him a lot about, hey, college is not going to be 2 years for you, buddy. We're going to do a double major. We're going to go straight into a master's program because I want to retire and you're going to support me. Right? So we need to be able to figure this out. Right? Let's get our students to higher levels of attainment. Let's not just stop short. And that is going to be a disruption. And that is going to take a lot of work and a lot of soul searching.
by a lot of us on what it means to earn some of these credits in high school. I am still disappointed at times when I hear a different institution say something to one of my students that says, oh, those credits aren't going to count because they were earned in high school. And that's a huge, huge challenge and burden that we've got to get over. We have to remove that type of language from our vocabulary. If a student is earning these credits in high school and it's been vetted by YVC through CTE dual credit or through Running Start or through Central or through Eastern through our college and high school partnerships, then they need to have the weight of those institutions behind them in their entirety. And we cannot let any preconceived notions or other things stop us. Because our kids are smarter than us. I gotta be honest, their guys are smarter than us. You just are, right? The tools and the resources that they have at their disposal now, compared to even when I was in school, is tremendous. These students are ready for it. So please, when we finish the meetings and we go back, don't let these meetings just be, kind of like Trevor was alluding to, just talk, right? Actually have some systems change. Go back and ask some really tough questions about, are we actually doing everything that we can to make sure that our courses are fully articulated, to make sure that our transfer degrees are set up right? And why can't we accept more students? Why can't we change some of our requirements and allow some students to come in and provide them some extra supports? This is real work and it's really important. But again, I want to thank specifically YVC, Central, Eastern, for some fantastic partnerships. I also make sure I highlight Wall Community College. We also do welding through them, so thank you to them. But all the different programs that are out. Okay. Lastly, who's going to help all of our principals with this? I get a lot of phone calls from a lot of high school principals asking for help on how to set this thing up. What did you do? What did you do? We need someone somewhere. I don't know if this is Student Achievement Council. I don't know if this is COP. I don't know if this is the State Board of Community and Technical Colleges. We need a training program for our high school principals on how to effectively navigate dual credit opportunities for their students. I field a lot of these phone calls. It's just something I do off to the side. But there is a real and significant need for that because our principals don't have this as part of the principal training program. Our counselors don't have it as part of the program. We need help there. So if we're going to get real about some sort of a dual credit initiative truly across the state and not a hero model, then we need some leadership there.
Thanks, Jeff. Let's open it up to other questions or comments.
Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Ernst, and I am the Vice President for Instruction and Student Services at Yakima Valley College, and I want to thank Jeff Charbonneau for his partnership. We've really moved from can we do this to how do we do this, and that's actually the right question. So I really want to highlight that, but I want to speak directly to his point, and I want to bring in something that President Walford was mentioning as well, is somebody has to figure out how to weave these things together. I graduated with 211 undergraduate credits. Let me curl your hair a little more. That was semester credits, not quarters. So understand that because there's a bewildering number of possibilities and credits and programs. And so Guided Pathways has sought to fix that problem. And it's one of the reasons why we've gone all in on that. But I think that community and technical colleges have a real role here to play in weaving these concepts together. And that's what we've really worked on with Zilla High School. And I'm going to tell you that was a baby step because that worked exactly as it's supposed to for Jeff's son. Exactly as it's supposed to. But that is not going to serve somebody accessing my nursing program as well. And so that student starts a few credits behind. So what's the next thing that we build and that we weave together so that our nursing student comes in and is able to access that program immediately because they've met all of their prerequisites. And this is something that our college is working on, and perhaps we're not the training ground for principals, but certainly we can play a very positive role in weaving those possibilities together. You know, computer science is a really, really difficult, challenging transfer program because every single one of you universities has a different requirement. I can't even tell students what math. I bring these students to the STEM program and tell them, I've got a computer science student for you to advise, and their heads just hang because they know this is going to be a really challenging one. So we're the ones who have the expertise on how we weave the college and the high school together. CWU does a very fine job. Eastern Washington's doing a really fine job with that. But how do we weave those together in something that's truly meaningful for these students? They will meet these goals, they will stay in school, we will retain them if what they're doing is meaningful. And they will go on to the next credential, that master's program that you're talking about, because it's meaningful to them. And that's really what we're looking to help students to achieve as we're putting these programs together. And so really look for more. And we're excited to have the support of WSAC as we're moving through these kinds of processes. Really look for more degrees, much like built on the model that Jeff has put out there that do answer students' goals within their own pathways and are much more responsive to those student goals in their pathways. And the last thing I will say is we just got a $2.9 million Title V grant so that we can build career services right into these pathways and into these degrees. And I'm not envisioning that as when you get done with your program, we'll help you write your resume kind of to employment services or career services. I'm thinking of this from the moment we have contact with that high school student expressing interest in a pathway. What does that career look like? What are the steps that you need? Does that really suit you? What might suit you better? All the way at that stage. And I think that that will help us build better pathways, weave together better degrees for our high school students, and then move them on to that next credential more smoothly. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? I can feel the passion in the room. This is, yes.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Randy Spalding, I'm the Executive Director for the State Board of Education, and I just want to really appreciate what you've heard this meeting around intentionality about what we're doing in high school. And as you look at your completion initiative in your strategic plan, I think really layering in the need for intentionality in the coursework that students are engaged in with equal credit in high school so that they can progress towards a degree of credential is super important. We have 88% of our kids in high school are taking a credit course. And so this is not a marginal thing that's happening. It's a growing trend. I really appreciate this work and the need that's coming out. I just wanted to share that.
I appreciate that. I mean, you know, what's going on in the high school, I mean, we got to look at it as one system, right? We have a tendency to look at our silos. And like I said, the passion in this room around this topic is palpable. Any other comments or questions anybody would like to make? Again, I want to, Superintendent Green, I appreciate you. We met just a month ago, and you said, do you really want to hear what I have to say? And I can tell you, we absolutely did. And thank you for joining us today. Our friends from Central, the students, thank you for joining us. All the comments are here. I do think the challenge for the council staff is how do we turn, I think people are frustrated. I think we have a sense of what we know what the questions are. We have some ideas of what the answers might be. How do we turn this into action? And I think we really have some challenges in front of us in the coming months, not the coming years, in the coming months about how we do that. So with that being said, if there's no other comments, we will go to the regional challenge grants. Thank you again.
Thank you, Jeff. For those of us I haven't had the chance to meet, my name is Keith Dean, and I am the Regional Challenge Grant Team's President, Researcher, and Storyteller.
I'm Ludwig, Associate Director of Strategy and Partnership.
Good morning, I'm still listening. Abby Roth, I'm also with the Regional Challenge Grant Team and the Strategy and Partnerships team. And before we begin in earnest today, I want to say a big hello to the regional partners both in the room and in the virtual Zoom room. We see you. We're so grateful for you being here. I also, if you go to the next slide, I want to take a moment to celebrate some of the wonderful things that have transpired in the last year and a half with Regional Challenge Grant, including, but certainly not limited to, those up on the slide before you. With the support of this council, we have begun funding to 8 regional partnerships, published our first legislative reports on the work of the Regional Challenge Grant, hosted our first Grantee Summit last fall, and through learning in the first cycle of funding, created our second request for letters of interest. And the culmination of that process brings us to where we are today with our recommendation of 5 additional regional partnerships, as well as recommendations regarding our previous cohort of 8 grantees. Next slide, please. So our brief presentation today is going to start with the outcomes of that 2024 request for letter of interest process and our recommendations for those new partnerships. And later we'll share 2 recommendations about the existing cohort. We'll be sharing our learning throughout, and you should have in front of you 2 council documents, one related to the new partnerships and one related to the existing partnerships. Next slide, please. So all of our work is grounded in our theory of change for regional partnerships and guided by our North Star state goal that we've been talking about today, that 70% of adults attain a post-secondary credential. And Regional Challenge Grant is built on the premise that local communities can shape student outcomes from a position of deep community knowledge, trust, and needs. We're in the early stages of this theory of change. We're focused on those first 2 arrows, as you can see on the description there. In the first, in terms of funding regional partnerships, as those partnerships begin to drive increases in attainment and close equity gaps. We are already seeing observing great shifts in community approaches and connections as these partners begin to grow, supported by our initial investments.
Next slide, please. Pragmatically, our fund is how we are supporting this vision, including bringing the 3 resolutions laid out today to support new and existing place-based partnerships. In particular, we will be looking at the gold section of this pie chart in front of you, specifically the allocation towards sustaining current and new partnerships to enable evaluation. As a reminder, funds in this account roll over, aiding in sustained investments in regional partnerships to enact the systems change required to meet the statewide attainment goal. Additional details about our budget report can be found in the 2023 legislative budget. Next slide.
So before we move into discussion about new partners, let's just step back for a second and ground ourselves in some of what we've learned in the first year and a half of program implementation. First, getting to know each other takes time, and so too does the change we hope to catalyze. Affecting change in this way, not just on the margins, but by shifting hearts and minds, can't be accomplished in just a few short years. It's not that there isn't urgency to this work. In fact, there is great urgency, and that is part of why this regionally specific funding model is so important. Second, how we invite partners to apply. These processes must reflect the programmatic vision. When we began the process of revising this year's request for letters of interest, we knew there were more places where we could be more intentional about what we asked of our partnerships and in how we reviewed and made recommendations. So we adapted. A few highlights, though certainly not all of them. We no longer have 2 distinct tiers of funding. This work exists along the continuum, and we want our program to reflect that. We shortened the page limit of the request for letters of interest and clarified what we asked partners to share with us. The request for LOI identified a funding vision that could guide partnerships and their understanding of how they would review their anticipated work. And the engagement of educational experts in both our advisory and review committees provided an opportunity to learn from numerous perspectives as we reviewed each application. Third, and I think this is where it's most important, when possible, we should minimize administrative burdens for grantees. Time spent on administrative reporting requirements and reapplication processes is time that partnerships must spend away from their communities and away from the work. In response to this, we are constantly reassessing what we ask and how we ask it. We also ground our reporting in a clear understanding of why we ask each question. In this same vein, we have learned that 1 year of funding is too short. It does not give us enough time to get to know the work of the partnerships, and it does not give partnerships enough funding to plan sustainably. We need to create a cycle of at least 2 years to do this well. Next slide. And with that, the Washington Student Achievement Council is pleased to recommend funding to 5 regional partnerships as a result of the 2024 request for letters of interest. The review of applications was rigorous and competitive, including 13 total voices from across the state and country. Partnerships were evaluated both as an application and as a cohort as it relates to partnership strength, community responsiveness, and activities around increasing the post-secondary attainment goal. The 5 partnerships that we'll present here today, which collectively represent more than 30 cross-sector organizations from 13 counties, exemplify strong alignment with our funding vision, which included a focus on adult learners, work focused on credential completion, and partnerships that are emerging or forming. The total amount requested across these 5 partnerships is approximately $1.55 million over 1 year. This cohort, and we will walk through the partnerships next, includes a comprehensive cross-section of educational partners, innovative community-based organizations, and new and targeted areas of the state to grow our geographic reach. Next slide.
We are going to highlight a couple of details about each of the 5 partnerships for recommendation today. And important to note, the sharing is not comprehensive. For complete details, you can see the full narrative information available in the council document on new partnerships. Specific for Centro Cultural Mexicano, we are especially excited by their geographic approach, which is a new understanding within the Regional Challenge Grant cohort and is responsive to the Latino populations they serve around the I-5 corridor, where each partnership organization acts as a regional hub. Next slide, please. With the Elevate Partnership, which stands for Empowering Learners to Excel Through Vocation Advancement, Training, and Education, we are particularly excited about the innovative work they are doing in Snohomish County in the Credit for Prior Learning space in partnership with Goodwill to serve refugee and asylee adult learners. Next slide, please.
With Kids Up Strong is a unique partnership in that they are an established collective impact partnership with a history of deeply grounded, collaborative, and cross-sector work to improve the lives and conditions of folks in Kitsap and Mason counties. And with Regional Challenge Grant, we're particularly excited that they're expanding their work intentionally to incorporate a post-secondary partner with the creation of an aligned bridge opportunity with Olympic College. Next slide, please. And with the Olympic Peninsula Resource Co-op, they'll be establishing one-stop shops to support adult learners in accessing both basic needs resources and post-secondary educational resources at a unified hub location in Clallam and Jefferson counties, and one such example in in Forks, Washington, thinking specifically about the geographic specificity of that region and the needs of learners there. Next slide, please.
We are excited by the approach laid out by Washington State University Native American Health Sciences Partnership to coordinate pathway programs between K-12 and post-secondary in the health sciences by specific request of tribal elders for Indigenous youth and adults from the central and eastern tribal lands of our state in a way that honors the healthcare and medicine's relationship with the land. Next slide, please. So all of that said, in front of you is a map of the specific geographic areas inclusive of both counties and the tribal lands from our new regional partnerships cohort. And this brings us to our first resolution, in which I'll pass it to our council chair for further discussion.
Discussion. And one thing I just thought would be good is just take people through, I know it's in the document, just through the process that you went through to get to these 5. I think it's good to, I know you briefly touched on, but I think it's just good to, who else was involved in vetting the various
proposals and how you got down to this one.
Absolutely. I'll get us started and then please jump in. So our process this year, some of the learning from the last cycle, we thought about both our particular funding vision that we laid out around supporting adult learners, credential completion strategies, and also as we moved away from two distinct tiers, thinking about how to support emerging and forming partnerships in an equitable way. So with that funding vision, we also thought about what does it mean to be truly aligned with the vision of Regional Challenge Grant. And we came through, studying the materials that have been created, the partnership conversations over the last year. There are a couple of really key areas to this work. One around community responsiveness. How does a partnership engage authentically in that area with community? Who is a part of the partnership, et cetera? And then also the partnership strength. So partnerships can look all kinds of different ways, and they absolutely do. But what are some of those elements of a strong partnership? And so in order to get great expertise and advice on this, we brought in teams of external advisors to support that process on both of those key areas. So we had an advisory team that represented experts supporting understanding in each of those areas. We also had an internal review team that thought about each of these applications in the larger context of WSAC's work and the particular pieces of the funding vision, especially around adult learner support and credential completion support. So it was a month-long process. We provided a couple of updates in the form of memos to the council throughout. That's in part because of just how much sort of depth and layers there were to the process.
And what kind of engagement did you have with the applicants?
So this year, we incorporated a formal discussion phase, what we called phase 2 of the request for letters of interest, in which we requested a draft statement of work, a full budget with expenditures, including what will go to the partnerships within the organization, as well as a conversation with the WSAC RCG team. And so each partnership sat down with us. We prepared questions in advance that were based both on a holistic review of the whole application pool, but also specific learning we sought to better understand within those applications. We then brought those questions to these discussions and were able to have a rich hour-long conversation with each group in advance of that final decision-making by the review team, which was not just the 3 of us here, but 3 other WSAC staff as well.
Let's open it up to questions from the council.
Thank you for all of this work. Could you actually speak to the 33 applications you are not recommending in terms of just the effort and work that went into those? Are they promising? Are they close? Was it a tough decision? What kind of feedback loops? Because that's a lot, that represents a lot of work on behalf of those partners. And if my math is right, in more than 100 folks put energy into it, and we wouldn't be recommending them. So what are we going to do with that?
Great question, Terry. And I think that is incredibly important. Our application pool of our entire 38 represented an incredibly competitive amount of applications in which we saw strong vision alignment, especially as we're growing as a program, in which they were all representative not only of important community responsive work in respective areas of the state, but of strong partnerships that are coming together in cross-sector ways to think about our different systems sorts of alignments, especially between K through 12 and higher ed, as it relates to CBO engagement as well. It was incredibly rigorous and incredibly competitive. And in that, a lot of important and tough decisions were made, and we're grateful for our 13 voices in addition to our 3 today that were involved in the process to help inform this decision. And I think importantly, this is I would say a call for, as we're thinking for the next legislative session, where an expanded investment in the Regional Challenge Grant work would mean an expanded investment in further partnerships across the state, in which we could grow not only in our 2024 requests for letters of interest, but 2025, 2026, and so on.
And I'll just, we're continuing to build out both regional partnerships team and WSAC in general. We're thinking about the ways to collaboratively learn with funded partners and also share learning with other partners, folks that maybe have applied to regional challenge grant or might want to apply in the future, to create further opportunities for those conversations. We're actively engaged in that process now and we'll have highlights on that entirely.
What kind of feedback did you get from the non-recipients receive? So what kind of feedback did you give them? How were they told, that kind of thing?
We communicated with folks based on the phases of our process, as outlined in our request for letters of interest. We shared if folks were moving forward to phase 2 of the discussion or not. That communication was done by email. And we included in that communication that we are available for follow-up conversations and feedback. We're hoping to be able to engage with partners this summer as we conclude this part of the process for that further learning and feedback.
We'll go after Paul. Okay, Paul, I didn't say Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to commend the WSAC team because this is a culmination of a lot of hard work. So thank you very much. This is really exciting. I want to recognize Peninsula College President, Dr. Susie Ames, who has joined us here. And you saw Peninsula on the list there. So congratulations, Dr. Ames. It's really exciting. And you, council members may remember that we were at Peninsula late last year. And so I had a chance to see the partnerships that Dr. Ames has built in person. So congratulations, Dr. Ames. The last thing I want to say is that you may remember that during the first round, I had some not concerns, but questions about maybe why there was such focus on the K-12 population and not as much on adult learners. And so I'm thrilled. I'm genuinely thrilled to see such a focus here on adult learners, a population that I care so much about. In partnership with, which looks like about 6 community and technical colleges and other higher ed institutions. So bravo to the WSAC team and everybody else for thinking not only about our K-12 population, but how we can serve all of Washington's population. Thank you.
Yeah, just sharing my thanks. I mean, these selectees and their programs look phenomenal, and I'm really excited to see their work be supported by the council and the investment from the state. Just one question about I think it was the 12 or the 13 people that do the review. Are there external from WSAC? Is there higher ed reps?
Sure. 2 separate teams. So we separated them out based on our process. The advisory committee had external and internal WSAC folks within it. Their role was not decision makers, but informational. They were reading to surface, to provide probing questions, to provide insights that we could bring back to those discussions so that it wasn't a singular or 3-person set of perspectives going into the discussion phase. The review team, and this is a great opportunity to thank the review team, all of whom are here as well with us. That would be Yasmin, Abby, and Inez. They were part of the 6 ultimately who made the decisions by way of several ongoing meetings. We had long conversations where we discussed each partnership on its own, in its context, dug in, went back and forth again, shared those insights and perspectives until we came to a consensus within the 6 of us about what partnerships would be brought forward.
Thank you.
Hi, Hannah. It's Yabi. Thank you so much for all the great work on this program. So please pardon me, I don't have much of a background regarding this program, so my questions may seem very blank. So the first question that I have is like, do these organizations need to submit any kind of like an annual report or anything to make sure that they have actually done what they were intending to do? That's my first question. And my second question is for extending the contracts. What kind of procedure was followed? Like how do you all make the decision that, okay, for these organizations, we're going to extend the contract? And even if there is any other organization whose contract was not extended, and why?
Sure. We will go ahead and we may hold on your second question since that's the topic of the second half of our presentation, and we'll be able to dig into that a little bit more. I think there'll still be a reason to come back specifically to that to elucidate some of those details.
But to start with the first question, as the person who spends the most time probably thinking about those reporting requirements for our grantees, the short answer is yes. We have multiple intermediate progress reports that our partners share back with us that include both narratives, either written or by way of conversation, as well as expense reports that are submitted to ensure that we know how they're using their funding. My colleagues Hannah and Abby also engage in monthly check-ins with our partners that allows us to have a really on-the-ground understanding of how the partnerships work is unfolding. Additionally, I've had the true pleasure of co-designing alongside the 4 existing implementation partners and increasingly the 4 partnership formation partnerships as well, outcomes that they're monitoring, short-term outcomes that they're monitoring for their academic years. These are meant to be outcomes that are directly in the path of their work, that align with what it is they are seeking to do, by which I mean it's either something they're already measuring or capturing, or something that if they begin to measure it, it adds value, direct value to what they are doing. And the co-design there is really critical because we as a state entity could very well make assumptions about what we believe to be the best outcomes for work that's happening on the ground in that short term, but we may miss it. And so the goal is to ensure that the outcomes themselves are culturally responsive and reflective of the work that is geographically and culturally specific. In addition to that, we're of course, I'm working alongside each of our partnerships to understand the geographic region in which they work, so that we can roll that up and understand how population level outcomes, so a much larger population than each individual partnership is serving at this moment, but still the actual indicator that we hope to affect system-wide in the future. We look at those population level outcomes for the regions where they work so that we can get a sense of what's happening with students who are graduating from high school, their direct to college enrollment rate, and ultimately though, I cannot fast forward us 8 years for students who are just not graduating high school, that long-term completion rate for students who we're helping to support.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I just wanted to add on this at a high level note, from the beginning, even from the statute that we proposed it. Key thing to always keep in mind, particularly for a broader audience, is we are not making a grant focus on an intervention, say like mentoring or something like that. We do support that intervention, but we're not making it the partnership. So our focus really is the partnership, because our belief is that college going, credential attainment, career development, all these things are shaped by the environment in which a person lives, right? And that really is a societal challenge. It can't, in many places, and that have been successful, is it hasn't been solved just by school and educator partnerships, schools and colleges, right? They're fundamental to it, but there's a broader sense of community leadership, diverse, engaged community leadership, engaging parents and students, particularly those who don't have access to these pathways. So the tough job that our folks will be working on is understanding, yeah, we can measure the performance of an intervention like a mentoring program, because that's a fairly robust science over time, whatever. But to understand whether or not this investment over time helps drive social change is a huge learning curve for all of us, not just, and it's one done grounded in partnership concepts. So I think it's always worth keeping that in mind as we look at this. First and foremost, the partnership, and then secondly, have the specific things they do, because healthy partnerships will sometimes, healthy communities will sometimes launch an initiative that doesn't work. That doesn't mean the community is not working, right? So we're going to learn a lot.
And this is reflected in those short-term outcomes too, where we work intentionally with partnerships and provide space to design, for instance, partnership-focused outcomes. Because we believe that the first part of this work is that the partnerships themselves are shifting the way the community itself comes together. And so if we can gather evidence of the ways in which the community is shifting, or the community organizations are shifting and working with each other in different ways, that is the first and foremost, most important testament to the systems change approach working.
You think any other questions before we bring this to a resolution?
I just have a quick question. In the learnings from some of the successes that you're just seeing in the partnership work, I'm curious, what are opportunities to share out to other practitioners and partnerships that share space on what are some best practices that are emerging to help inform other partnerships that may aspire or fell short of this process to really help set them up for success. And partnership work a lot. It is very challenging work, and so just kind of learning from some of the specifics that we're seeing throughout this process, how are those being shared back in real time to inform other partnerships?
I think, Abby, you may have more to add here, but the one piece that I would add is we are working toward the release of a report. I say report, but think of it as something more digestible than that, at the end of the summer that sets up some of these key learnings, not just in terms of where are we observing impact within the community, but also how are we learning about administratively what it means to lead a program that is designed to affect change in this way. And then in addition to that, what are our communities and partnerships learning about what they need to be doing? So there's kind of a multi-layered approach to try to demonstrate that this learning isn't just happening in a single space. It's not just shift this part of the intervention. It really is, we as a program need to shift how we operate. Our partners are shifting how they work in their communities, and then that's having this almost spillover effect into the ways in which learners and families are able to benefit and have that impact from the work that's happening.
The only thing I want to add to that, because you named being a practitioner, is that we were able to kick off our first sort of convening around community of practice last fall. And that's, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but that's sort of the next piece for us to pick up as we move these partners into contract and their work can begin, is to think more broadly about how to convene and support that ongoing learning for practitioners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. So how many challenge grant recipients are there in existence right now? What's the total number, and including hopefully these new ones, right?
So partnerships, or yeah, for partnerships, we have 8 original partnerships that we funded first. And this new cohort would represent an additional 5.
The total amount of investment from the program is in here.
Yes, and we actually, I know we have a hidden slide that we can pull up to show those numbers as well.
Great. Okay. Any other questions? I'd like to can we both bring the resolution up to the screen? I guess one of the key things I want to remind people was mentioned up front. One of the group's key learnings was that really bringing this after you make the initial grant and then coming back within a year and expecting to be able to make a real judgment, is it doing the things we expected it to do when we're still all in the learning process, was unrealistic. And so what you're seeing here is the ability to grant up to 2 years. We're not saying it's going to be 2 years. I've used the staff to work with the various grantees to really what is the right time frame, but it's an up to 2 year grant. And that is just different from how we approached it the first time around. So I just wanted, for full transparency, I want to make sure this is based on the learning that we had, and also with the staff's latitude to do it up until 2 years. It's not saying it's got automatically.
Yeah, just for a little bit of additional context, it is based on that ongoing learning. And to be very transparent, ongoing learning in real time as the LOI was created, we asked for original work to think about a year of initial funding from partners. And so really what we're thinking here is for, as those negotiations continue, now that we have an understanding of strength of partnership, community responsiveness, and some of the strategies that they've begun outlining for that first year, the reality of a year-long timeline, especially with the other systems and processes that we're aligning with our fiscal year, is that in a year grant, partners would receive funds beginning at the start of their contract in early July, and would need to be reapplying in January. So just, 6 months later. So that's why we're thinking about this now, to try and see if there's a way to, that's in alignment and accountable to the vision that we have and hold, to work with partners in a way that is less arduous for them.
Thank you. So the resolution that we have in front of us is to authorize the WSAC staff to award funds to the recommended 5 new partnerships for a total of up to $1.55 million per year for a granting period of up to but not exceeding 2 years, which we just discussed, following reporting and evaluation requirements. And we refer to the document so you can see what that means. So is there a motion to approve? There's a motion. Is there a second? Got to hear a second. Any further discussion? I'm just reading. I didn't see wrong. Okay, hearing nothing. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great, sounds unanimous. Anyone opposed? Okay. We're now going on to the second piece, which I will actually get to one of your questions. We are going to be talking about the recipients from the previous cohort. So we'll turn it over to you to discuss that. Well, just one reminder on that, excuse me. At the January meeting, we had a discussion around that. That at least for the partnerships that we were going to leave it up to the staff to kind of go ahead, because there was a timing issue about going ahead and moving forward on the partnership grants, long as it was not exceeding in a material way what they had previously been approved for. Again, due to the short, kind of the stuff year periods that we were dealing with. So with that being said.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you to the council for that approval, for their new recommendations. All right, I know we're almost at lunchtime. We're in the final stretch. Great. All right, big pivot. We are now shifting today's presentation towards that original 8 in our cohort that we spoke to previously. And so by aligning our processes within our vision, such as moving all grant agreements to the fiscal year schedule, we are integrating lessons learned with sustainable approaches. As Casey specifically has outlined, we also require additional time to measure the effectiveness of partnership work, and this contract extension request through June of 2025 will allow us to do exactly that. In addition, this process is guided by an assessment tool from the criteria presented at the last council meeting that Jeff spoke to, including partnership goal setting, alignment with the vision of our program, and fiscal responsibility. So this brings us today to our final 2 resolutions specific to the existing partnerships from our original cohort. Next slide, please. As you all have had the pleasure of seeing, we have an early success story in the Yakima Valley Partners for Education Partnership. And I want to take this time to express my sincere gratitude and thank the partnership for hosting us in a multitude of events, including here today at Heritage University, and for inviting our staff and council to the community events yesterday, from Toppenish to Mountain to Columbia. This request to council for an increased investment in the YVPE partnership in Resolution 2 is reflective of the ambitious work undertaken in the first granting period, which exceeds expectations for an emerging partnership. We funded YVPE in the first year within that partnership formation tier to pilot implementation level strategies. The partnership did not just pilot this work, but exceeded expectations with a slate of several community responsive strategies that are place-based to each of the 7 service districts within the valley. As a result, we seek to right-size their true implementation level work today. Early successes are outlined in the full council document on existing partnerships in front of you. And today in this resolution, we seek to be forward-looking and to see further success in the lower and middle valley as a result of its expanded investment in support of their communities to access post-secondary opportunities equitably. Next slide.
Our third resolution is to authorize WSAC staff to provide funding extensions to existing regional partners that demonstrate continued alignment with our programmatic vision. As you know, and as we discussed in previous meetings, these extensions represent an opportunity not just for them to continue their work, but for us to continue our learning alongside them. This process, as Hannah mentioned earlier, is crosswalked with key programming goals that guide our reporting processes. We are so excited that partners are finishing their first academic year of RCG funded work. Already in this short time, we've begun to observe the incredible power of a regional approach to systems change and how it percolates through communities over time. In Shahedo School District's Cornerstone program, staff are providing what communities say they need, which in some instances is serving as transportation so that kindergartners can participate in Jumpstart. Launchpad West is identifying new ways to build and strengthen how they support learners in their communities based on overlapping strengths and focal approaches with fellow CDOs in their region. United Way of the Blue Mountains conducted rich and comprehensive qualitative research to ensure that what they do next directly responds to what learners and families say pushes them away from and pulls them toward post-secondary education. This evidence, what I shared, what Hannah shared about YDPE, and what so many of us heard yesterday firsthand in these events, is occurring even as we know that the metrics that we monitor, which only capture part of the story, will not themselves reflect this learning for years to come. This understanding of the time required for change to percolate into outcomes underlies the initial intention in the 2022 request for letters of interest to fund partnerships for 2.5 years at the outset. A longer timeline provides an avenue for continuing early wins in outcomes and in learning to take root. It is for this reason that we seek to implement contract extensions for the 2022 cohort. And with this, I get the pleasure of handing the conversation to Jeff, who will lead us in discussion over these next two resolutions.
Okay, so we have two resolutions coming up and two resolutions here associated with the existing partnerships. So open it up to questions or comments. Sure, I just was thinking about the question that you asked about, all the partnerships other people put in previously and how we feedback. I can tell you what I was pleasantly surprised is that two of the people we just approved were unsuccessful candidates in the previous round, but who took the feedback, rethought their approach, strengthened the partnership, and leaned in maybe a little bit differently based on the feedback that we're getting. So I know at least two of the five were people that did not make it the first time, but regroup, listen, and reapply.
That's what I was getting at. Thank you. Good to hear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So Pat had a question, so we'll be trying to answer that, and I also have a lot of stuff when you're done.
I just get to keep talking because it's all about reporting. I love reporting. So a few different things. One is in this first year of the contract extensions, we intentionally designed processes that pull out the learning so that we know. We have three criteria, and I pulled them up, the ones that were mentioned in the conversation. The first is that the partnership is making progress for their goals alongside the communities they seek to support and based on their ongoing learning. The second is that their approach to the work is aligned with the vision of the Regional Challenge Grant. And the third is that the partnership is spending state funds as approved and outlined in the grant agreement. What you don't see in those criteria, but what we hold, is that there are a total of 13 what we call sub-criteria that are nested within each of these three, which we use to crosswalk with all of the materials that have been submitted by the partnerships, not only over the course of the granting period up to this point, but in intentional documents and materials that we've requested as part of this year's contract extension process. That includes, again, some of these narratives or the questions are not generic questions, but are tailored to each partnership based on what it is that we need to learn. It includes long hour to hour and a half long conversations, often one or two, we are having with partnerships and not just the lead partnership entity, but the partners that they work